Chapter 86. Qin Chuan had never participated in an auction before, and this was the first time he had heard about it. This made Qin Chuan, who was curious about everything new, couldn't help but ask, "Is there an auction in Xiang City?" Of course. A Zhu smiled and said, "Xiang City holds a small auction every month, and a large auction every half a year. The day after tomorrow is the day of the large auction. If you take this demon core to the auction, you should be able to get a good price." Qin Chuan said with some emotion, "Xiang City is indeed Xiang City. Although the state capital of Qing was also an independent city, it was far inferior to Xiang City. The area of Xiang City was at least 5 times that of the state capital of Qing, and the population was more than 10 times that of the state capital of Qing. Whether it was technological or economic conditions, the state capital of Qing couldn't be compared to Xiang City. At least, Qin Chuan had never heard of any auction in the state capital of Qing. Our Yu family has a special box at the auction. If you want to see the auction, you can come with us." A Zhu could see that Qin Chuan was very curious about the auction, so she didn't wait for Qin Chuan to mention it and took the initiative to invite him. Hearing a Zhu's invitation to participate in the auction, Qin Chuan was immediately very happy and said to a Zhu, "Thank you very much." For such a grand event like the auction, Qin Chuan didn't want to miss it. Even if he couldn't afford to buy anything, it was still very good to broaden his horizons. "You're welcome. If you take this demon core to the auction, you can also get a seat, but it won't be a box." A Zhu felt that it was necessary to explain these small things to Qin Chuan. If Qin Chuan misunderstood that she was deliberately doing him a favor, then it wouldn't be good. "I'll have to trouble Sister A Zhu about the auction." Qin Chuan handed the demon core to a Zhu and said, "I'll have to trouble you for a while." Originally, Qin Chuan had planned to leave after visiting the Yu clan, but now it seemed that he would have to stay for a few more days. After A Zhu left, Yu Kai'er looked at Qin Chuan, who was sitting on the sofa with a fascinated look on his face. She asked curiously, "What's so good about the auction? Why are you so excited?" Qin Chuan was stunned for a moment when he heard this. Then, he smiled bitterly and said, "For you, the auction is indeed meaningless. But for me, it's a rare opportunity to broaden my horizons. After all, I've never experienced such an occasion before. It's inevitable that I'm a little excited." Qin Chuan didn't try to hide it. He wasn't the kind of person who cared so much about his reputation. If he hadn't seen it before, then he hadn't seen it before. There was nothing to hide. "I didn't mean to mock you." Yu Kai'er was worried that Qin Chuan would misunderstand, so she quickly explained, "I just think that it's silly for a group of people to bid for the same thing at the auction. If you want something, you can just spend money to buy it. Why do you have to compete with others?" Qin Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This was probably the way a rich girl thought about things. Sure enough, it was different from ordinary people. Qin Chuan's optical computer had been destroyed during the battle with the demon beasts. Fortunately, his optical computer chip was saved, and he could continue to plug in a new optical computer. He borrowed a new optical computer from Yu Kai'er and plugged in the chip. In an instant, hundreds of messages poured into his mailbox. The optical computer beeped nonstop. Most of these messages were from Wang Bo, some from Lu Zi, and only one from Zhou Lin. Seeing these messages, Qin Chuan first opened Zhou Lin's message. There was only one simple sentence inside. "Foundation establishment has been completed." Seeing this sentence, Qin Chuan couldn't help but smile. He glanced at the time on the message. This message was sent to him by Zhou Lin 2 months ago. In other words, Zhou Lin had already stepped into the foundation establishment stage for 2 months. As expected of senior sister, her progress is really fast. Qin Chuan said with some emotion, "I don't know when I can step into the foundation establishment stage." Thinking so, Qin Chuan operated the optical computer to send a video call request to Zhou Lin. After waiting for about 3 seconds, the video call was connected. The optical computer flashed, and Zhou Lin's charming and beautiful face appeared in front of Qin Chuan. "Hello, congratulations on successfully advancing to the foundation establishment stage, senior sister." Qin Chuan looked at Zhou Lin with a smile and said, "My congratulations may be a little late, but I'm absolutely sincere. Since you have already walked out of the Cloud Dragon Mountain, You must have advanced to the Qi refining stage. Zhou Lin knew that Qin Chuan had entered the Cloud Dragon Mountain range to train. Since Qin Chuan contacted her at this time, it meant that Qin Chuan had already walked out of the Cloud Dragon Mountain range. This also meant that Qin Chuan had successfully advanced to the Qi refining stage and ended his training. This training was really scary, but not dangerous. Qin Chuan smiled and said with emotion, "I actually killed a demonic beast. Can you believe it? Demonic beast? Are you injured?" Zhou Lin suddenly frowned and asked with concern, "Are your injuries serious?" "I'm fine. I've already recovered." Qin Chuan chuckled. Seeing that Zhou Lin didn't doubt whether he had really killed a demonic beast, but was instead concerned about his physical condition, Qin Chuan felt very warm in his heart. "By the way, there's something I want to tell you." The expression on Zhou Lin's face suddenly became serious. She said to Qin Chuan in a very serious voice, "Is there anyone around you?" Qin Chuan heard this and looked around, then said to Zhou Lin, "There's no one." "What's wrong?" "After I returned to the school, I've been looking up information, trying to figure out what's going on with your brain. Combining the literature records and the explanations of the mentors, I finally came to a conclusion." Zhou Lin looked deeply at Qin Chuan and said, "The changes in your brain are not abnormal. It's very likely that it's a manifestation of the perfect state." Qin Chuan was stunned for a moment and said with some astonishment, "You mean I've already touched the perfect state?" "That's right." Zhou Lin nodded solemnly and said, "In the official history, there are very few records about the perfect state. However, I found a rumor in the unofficial history. 3,000 years ago, the almighty cultivator Li Hua, the Venerable, was once burned by a raging fire during a cultivation in the body-tempering stage. And this Li Hua, the Venerable, was the person who recently touched the perfect state in the body-tempering stage. And his domain was the domain of fire. When you were enveloped by the power of thunder, it was very similar to how this Li Hua, the Venerable, was burned by a raging fire. Therefore, I suspect that this special situation should be a symbol of touching the perfect state." Hearing Zhou Lin's words, Qin Chuan felt that his brain wasn't enough. He originally didn't have any hope for the perfect state, but now Zhou Lin suddenly told him that he had touched the perfect state long ago, but he just didn't know it. This was too fantastical. Chapter 87. Senior Sister, could you have made a mistake? Qin Chuan scratched his head and said, "If that's really the symbol of reaching the perfect state, then why don't I feel any changes at all?" Other than the instantaneous burst of lightning energy, Qin Chuan did not feel any special changes in his body. If this was really the perfect state, then it was a little too ordinary. You don't know the true face of Mount Lu because you're in this mountain. You can't feel the benefits of developing your brain to the perfect state because you're already used to this feeling. Without a comparison, of course you won't be able to realize the power of the perfect state. Zhou Lin pursed her lips and said to Qin Chuan, "According to my calculations, whether it's in terms of spiritual power or perception, you should be far superior to people of the same level." Hearing Zhou Lin's words, Qin Chuan recalled that when he was surrounded by the green wolves, the reason why he was able to kill half of them in an instant was because of his astonishing perception. He could predict the trajectory of the green wolves' attacks in advance and make the correct response. Later on, when he was at the Rocky Mound, only he could sense the existence of the thunder beast hidden deep in the cave. Later on, we did not have a talisman pen to use. Qin Chuan forcefully used his spiritual power as a pen to inscribe a talisman array. It was just an experiment, but in the end, it was unexpectedly successful. At that time, he did not have time to think about it. Now that he thought about it, if his spiritual power was not strong enough, he would not have been able to inscribe a talisman array with his spiritual power. If that was the case, perhaps he really did reach the perfect state. Zhou Lin saw the change in Qin Chuan's expression and asked with concern, "How is it? Did you notice that you're different from others?" Qin Chuan nodded and said, "If you didn't remind me, I really wouldn't have noticed those special things. If that's the case, you have indeed touched upon the realm of perfection. Zhou Lin looked at Qin Chuan with gratification and said, "You did not disappoint me." Faced with Zhou Lin's joyful gaze, Qin Chuan also felt a little elated. After all, he had always yearned to possess great power. Now that he had touched upon the perfect state of brain development, it was equivalent to obtaining a pass to become a powerhouse. Of course, he would feel excited about this. However, because there was no way to turn this potential into real strength for the time being, he was only a little happy. In fact, he wasn't too excited. For the current you, the perfect realm might not increase your strength significantly. But when you reach a higher realm, you will find that as long as you are one step faster than others, you will always be one step faster than others. For others, instantiating a domain was a very difficult thing, but it was different for you. As long as you reached a certain level, instantiating a domain would be a matter of course. When that time comes, the advantages of the perfect realm will be fully displayed. Speaking of which, Zhou Lin was a little envious of Qin Chuan. Although her brain development had reached a shocking 97%, and logically speaking, she had at least a 70% chance of instantiating a domain. Even so, she might still fail. To succeed, luck and strength were indispensable. On the other hand, for Qin Chuan, instantiating a domain was as natural and simple as eating and drinking water. There was no difficulty at all. How could people not be envious of such a talent? As far as I know, no one in the 6 great academies has touched upon the perfect realm, so you must be careful and keep this matter a secret. Don't leak it out. Zhou Lin patiently reminded Qin Chuan again to not leak this matter. Once it was leaked, it would definitely lead to a fatal disaster. I know. Qin Chuan nodded seriously. This matter concerned his life and death, so of course he would be careful to keep his secret. All right, senior sister, since you've advanced to the foundation establishment stage, you should have already held a celebration banquet, right? I haven't given you a gift yet. Qin Chuan said to Zhou Lin with some regret. It's a pity that I couldn't attend the banquet, but I'll definitely make up for the gift. It was a pity that the demon core was of the earth element, while Zhou Lin's talent rune was of the metal element. Otherwise, he could have given it to Zhou Lin as a gift. There's no hurry about the gift. Moreover, I didn't hold a celebration banquet. Qin Chuan was a little surprised and asked, "Why is that?" Even though Qin Chuan was not very knowledgeable, he knew that cultivators who had advanced to the foundation establishment stage would hold a celebration banquet to share the joy of advancing to the foundation establishment stage with their friends and family. It was somewhat similar to the graduation banquet. Zhou Lin had advanced for 2 months, but she had not held a celebration banquet. This was something he did not expect. It couldn't be that she was hiding her strength, right? There's no reason. I just don't want everyone to know, Zhou Lin explained casually. If you don't think it's appropriate, we can just celebrate when we meet. Zhou Lin explained faintly, and then said, if you think it's inappropriate, we can just celebrate when we meet. The two chatted for a while more before ending the call. Qin Chuan took out the chip from the optical computer and walked to Yu Kai, who was sitting not far away. He returned the optical computer to Yu Kai and said, "Thank you for sponsoring the optical computer. Just take it. It's not worth much anyway." Yu Kai shook her head and did not take the optical computer from Qin Chuan. Looking at the smile on Qin Chuan's face, she was a little disappointed and asked, "Qin Chuan, did you have a good time chatting with your senior sister Zhou Lin?" "Yeah." Qin Chuan grinned. Of course, he was happy to know that his brain development had reached the perfect state. Looking at the sincere smile on Qin Chuan's face, Yu Kai-er's mood could not help but become even more depressed. As expected, compared to getting along with her, Qin Chuan obviously preferred to get along with senior sister Zhou Lin. In the cultivation room, Zhou Lin was lying on the floor. Thinking about Qin Chuan's brain development reaching the perfect state, her heart could not help but surge with endless fighting spirit. She needed to become stronger so that she would not fall behind in the future. Ding dong. A melodious sound of the doorbell rang. Immediately, the door of the cultivation room slowly opened. A tall figure walked in from outside and said to Zhou Lin, Lin, this is the list of people who entered and left the Cloud Dragon Mountain Range yesterday. Here." "No need." Zhou Lin gently shook her head and said, "There's no need to investigate in the future." The person looked at Zhou Lin with some surprise, but did not ask much. She casually put the information aside and looked at Zhou Lin with some envy. Lin, ever since you advanced to the foundation establishment stage, I found that your skin has become better and better. I also have to advance to the foundation establishment stage as soon as possible. But it's too difficult to apply for a bottle of foundation establishment elixir from a school. I really envy you. You can actually buy foundation establishment elixir from outside. Looking at her best friend's distressed appearance, Zhou Lin could not help but smile slightly. Some things could not be bought with money. Chapter 88. In the evening, Qin Chuan stood in front of the porthole and looked at the bustling western sun city. He couldn't help but feel a lofty feeling in his heart. One day, he would be able to rely on his own strength to stand above the heavens and earth and look down on all living things. We'll be returning home soon, but my father is a little busy and doesn't have time to see you for the time being. Yu Kai stood beside Qin Chuan and whispered to Qin Chuan, "I'm really sorry. Why are you apologizing to me? Your father is the patriarch of the family. It's normal for him to be busy with a lot of work." Qin Chuan smiled and didn't take this matter to heart. Yu Kai's father was the patriarch of the Yu family. It was normal for him to not have time to see an insignificant person like him. He didn't feel that he was being treated coldly. Seeing that Qin Chuan didn't take it to heart, Yu Kai was slightly relieved. In fact, her father wasn't usually busy and spent most of his time cultivating or recuperating. He often stayed at home. The reason why he didn't have time to see Qin Chuan was mostly because he didn't want to see Qin Chuan. Yu Kai could more or less guess the reason why her father didn't want to see Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan, who didn't want to become the son-in-law of the Yu family, wasn't worthy of her father's excessive attention. The 3-year agreement, in Yu Kai's heart, might really be a promise, but in her father's eyes, it was just an excuse. Compared to meeting the patriarch of the Yu family, Qin Chuan was clearly more interested in the auction. With the status of the Yu family in Western Sun City, the auction house would always send a list to the Yu family the day before the auction. The list would clearly record the information and origin of each item on the auction stage as a show of respect to the Yu family. Although Qin Chuan was very curious about this list, he didn't intend to borrow it. This was because he wanted to personally see the auction items and experience the feeling of surprise. Because Qin Chuan was very interested in the auction, Yu Kai was also interested in it. She curiously asked Qin Chuan, "Will the items you want appear in the auction?" Qin Chuan pondered for a moment and said, "If there's something with the lightning attribute, I naturally want it. There are also talisman brushes and talisman arrays. These are all things I want, but I won't necessarily buy them." Simply speaking, it wasn't that he didn't want to buy them, but he couldn't afford them. The current Qin Chuan could be said to be poor. The only thing he could buy at the auction, of course, of the items of the auction, of the items of the demon cores of Qin Chuan. Yu Kai carefully memorized Qin Chuan's needs. She had already made a decision. If something that Qin Chuan needed appeared in the auction, then she would buy it for him. If Qin Chuan didn't want to accept it, then she would use the excuse of lending it to him. Qin Chuan didn't know what Yu Kai was planning. At this time, the airship had arrived above the Yu residence and was about to land. Qin Chuan looked at the huge manor under his feet through the window and couldn't help but sigh at the strength of the Yu family. In a place like Xiang City, where every inch of land was worth gold, it wasn't possible to build such a huge manor with just money. When the airship landed steadily on the platform, a Zhu appeared again and led Qin Chuan and Yu Kai out of the airship. They took a private car and went to the banquet hall. The Yu family was going to hold a celebratory banquet for Yu Kai's return. After hearing about it, Qin Chuan declined Yu Kai's invitation on the grounds that he was not feeling well. He also asked someone to send him to the guest room. After Qin Chuan left, a Zhu slightly pursed her lips and said to Yu Kai, "It is a wise choice for Qin Chuan not to attend the banquet." Yu Kai was a little surprised and asked, "Why is that?" "Your mother knows about the matter between you and Qin Chuan." Although she didn't say anything, she invited most of the young elites of Xi'ang City to attend a banquet. Many of them are your admirers. What do you think will happen if Qin Chuan appears at the banquet? A Zhu looked deeply at Yu Kai, and said, "You are the princess of our Yu family. Only you can refuse others. No one can refuse you. Do you understand?" Yu Kai looked at Zhu in a daze, but in the end, she remained silent and didn't say anything. In the guest room, Qin Chuan was sitting on the sofa with his eyes slightly closed. He was using his perception to touch everything in the room as much as possible. He was carefully perceiving the texture of everything. It was a strange feeling, as if his soul was integrated into every corner of the room. He could clearly understand the layout and changes in every inch of the room. Even the flow of air became concrete and vivid. This was a feeling that Qin Chuan had never had before. Or it was a feeling of being ignored by him. In the perception of ordinary people, a room was a room, and a vase was a vase, but in Qin Chuan's perception, it was as if everything was alive and moving all the time. This strange feeling only lasted for about 2 minutes before Qin Chuan had no choice but to stop. This was because doing so consumed too much of his mental energy. With his current physical condition, it was very difficult for him to maintain this state for too long. Even if he completely recovered, he would probably only be able to last for 5 minutes. The reason why he couldn't wait to experience the changes in his perception was purely to verify Zhou Lin's conjecture. Senior sister is really senior sister. You know much more than me. Qin Chuan grinned. After a moment of rest, he got up and went to the small cultivation room in the guest room, ready to cultivate. After he advanced to the qi refining stage, the thunder-devouring art finally revealed the second level of mental cultivation method, and, at the same time, a new thunder talisman array. Back when he was in the Cloud Dragon mountain range, he didn't have the time to study this. Now that he had settled down in the Yu family, he finally had the time to figure out the new mental cultivation method, as well as the inscription method of the new talisman array. Right when Qin Chuan was sitting cross-legged on the ground and circulating the lightning devour technique, his body suddenly trembled slightly. After that, boundless golden talisman markings suddenly surged out from his body, and it was like an ocean that instantly drowned him beneath it. Qin Chuan slowly opened his eyes and looked at the sea of talisman characters in front of him with a surprised expression. The vivid golden talisman characters were the most beautiful thing in the world in Qin Chuan's eyes. It was pleasing to the eye. Whoosh! The sea of talisman characters flowed, and the talisman characters jumped out of it like swimming fish. In front of Qin Chuan, they formed two very familiar talisman arrays. Chapter 89. Qin Chuan looked at the two talisman arrays that appeared in front of him in astonishment. He exclaimed, "Spiritual Reception Talisman Array? Spiritual Injection Talisman Array." Qin Chuan wouldn't be mistaken. The two talisman arrays that appeared in front of him were the Spiritual Reception Talisman Array and Spiritual Injection Talisman Array that he had seen in Black City. Just when Qin Chuan said the names of the two talisman arrays, the two talisman arrays suddenly collapsed and turned into two rows of runes. They were clearly displayed in a specific order in front of Qin Chuan. It seemed that they wanted Qin Chuan to remember the order of the arrangement. Seeing the changes in the two talisman arrays, Qin Chuan suddenly had a very bold guess in his heart. The Sea of Runes might be teaching him how to inscribe the Spiritual Reception Talisman Array and Spiritual Injection Talisman Array. Although it sounded incredible, it was the truth. When Qin Chuan firmly remembered the order and evolution of the runes of the two talisman arrays, the two talisman arrays finally dissipated completely in the Sea of Runes. The next moment, Qin Chuan's consciousness was blurred. When he woke up again, he had returned to the cultivation room as if nothing had happened. Qin Chuan raised his head and glanced at the clock in the cultivation room. It was now 18:22:30 in the afternoon. He remembered that this was the time when he entered the cultivation room and sat down. The difference between the two times should be less than 3 seconds. In other words, he spent about half an hour in the Sea of Runes. but only a blink of an eye had passed in reality. However, this wasn't the thing that Qin Chuan was most concerned about. What he was most concerned about now was whether he could successfully inscribe the Spiritual Reception Talisman Array and Spiritual Injection Talisman Array according to the method taught by the Sea of Runes with his current strength. Inscribing a higher-level talisman array required a talisman pin and a disc array, which happened to be in a cultivation room. Qin Chuan couldn't wait to take the talisman pin and disc array and began to inscribe. Soon he failed. Looking at the talisman array that was like graffiti on the disc array, Qin Chuan took a deep breath and calmed his excitement. After his state of mind calmed down, he began a new inscription, but he failed again. I clearly inscribed according to the method taught by the Sea of Runes. How could I fail? Qin Chuan scratched his head and was puzzled. After the third and fourth inscription failed, Qin Chuan had to admit that although he had mastered the method of inscribing the Spiritual Reception Talisman Array and Spiritual Injection Talisman Array, with his current strength, there was no way to inscribe it successfully. This feeling of being unable to excavate a treasure mountain made Qin Chuan feel uncomfortable. No, if I can't inscribe these two talisman arrays with my strength, then there's no need for the Sea of Runes to show me the method of inscribing these two talisman arrays now. There must be a problem in one of the links. Qin Chuan thought for a while and finally looked at the talisman pin and disc array in his hand. What if I abandon the talisman pin and disc array and just use my mental strength to inscribe the talisman array? When this thought emerged in his mind, Qin Chuan's heart could not help but beat violently. He forced himself to calm down, put down the talisman pin and disc array in his hand, and concentrated on inscribing the talisman array in the void with his mental strength. As time passed, Qin Chuan's face gradually turned pale, and a dense layer of sweat seeped out of his forehead. He was exhausted to the extreme. However, at this time, only half of the Spiritual Reception Talisman Array was inscribed. Although he had not succeeded, Qin Chuan was already convinced that he had found the correct inscription method. When the time came to 19 o'clock, Qin Chuan finally successfully inscribed the last talisman with his mental strength. In the next moment, the dozens of talismans that were floating in the void were strictly put together, forming a talisman array that emitted a hazy light. The Spiritual Reception Talisman Array was successfully inscribed. Looking at the talisman array that appeared in front of him, although Qin Chuan felt dizzy, he was extremely excited. He had actually inscribed a fourth-level talisman at the first level of Qi refinement. No, Qin Chuan frowned slightly. He carefully sensed the activity of the spiritual aura in the cultivation room and found that under the enhancement of the Spiritual Reception Talisman Array, the activity of the spiritual aura in the cultivation room only increased by about 30%. It did not reach the level that Chu Hua once said to him that it could increase by 3 times. In other words, the enhancement effect of the Spiritual Reception Talisman Array that he inscribed with his mental strength was only 1/10 of the original. I understand now. Qin Chuan suddenly understood. With his current strength, inscribing a real fourth-level talisman array was completely whimsical. However, if he wanted to inscribe a fourth-level talisman array that was 10 times weaker, then it might not be impossible. What the Sea of Runes taught him was not the inscription method of the real Spiritual Reception Talisman Array, but the inscription method of the weakened version of the Spiritual Reception Talisman Array. After thinking through this, Qin Chuan's mood gradually calmed down. The difficulty of inscribing a Spiritual Reception Talisman Array that was 10 times weaker was equivalent to the difficulty of inscribing an ordinary first-level talisman array. With his current strength, being able to successfully inscribe a first-level talisman array was a normal thing. It was not something to be proud of. It seems that I still overestimated myself. Qin Chuan smiled bitterly. At first, he really thought that he was talented and could inscribe a fourth-level talisman array when he just entered the Qi refinement stage. Now, it seemed that he really thought too much. However, Qin Chuan did gain something. At least in his knowledge, there was no first-level talisman array that could play the role of Spiritual Reception Talisman Array. In other words, the Sea of Runes weakened the spiritual reception talisman array, which was equivalent to creating a brand new first-level talisman array. Moreover, it was a first-level talisman array that was helpful for cultivation. However, in order to inscribe this weakened version of the spiritual reception talisman array, one must first have an incomparably strong mental strength. In other words, this weakened version of the spiritual reception talisman array was completely created to cater to Qin Chuan. Even if other people learned it, they might not be able to learn it. Although it's only a 30% enhancement effect, if the spiritual infusion talisman array is added, then this stacked enhancement will become very amazing. It means that my cultivation time for one day is almost equivalent to 1.5 days of other people's cultivation time. Over time, my advantage will become bigger and bigger. In the future, when my cultivation level is higher, I might be able to inscribe a spiritual reception talisman array and spiritual infusion talisman array with a stronger enhancement effect. As expected of the Sea of Runes, it's really amazing. Qin Chuan grinned, then fell back and directly fainted. There was no other way. In order to inscribe this weakened version of the spiritual reception talisman array, Qin Chuan used too much mental strength. It was really his limit to be able to hold on until now before falling asleep. Chapter 90. When Qin Chuan woke up, it was already the next morning. He opened his eyes in a daze, and the first thing he saw was Yukai, who was squatting beside him and looking at him with a smile. "You're finally awake." Seeing Qin Chuan wake up, Yukai teased Qin Chuan with a smile. "I thought you had been cultivating in the cultivation room all night, but I didn't expect you to be sleeping here." Qin Chuan sat up, stretched his body, and grinned, saying, "I was too tired from cultivating yesterday, so I fell asleep unconsciously." After a night's rest, Qin Chuan became full of energy again. He looked around and asked Yukai, "When you came in, did you find anything special?" Qin Chuan didn't know when the spirit-receiving talisman array dissipated after he fell asleep. If Yukai accidentally saw it, it would be hard to explain. This also reminded Qin Chuan that in the future, when he wasn't sure whether the surrounding environment was safe or not, it was better not to act rashly. After all, Qin Chuan didn't think that all talisman matrix masters could inscribe talisman matrices with their spiritual power in the qi refining stage. If this matter was spread out, it would inevitably attract unnecessary attention. "No, I didn't." Yukai shook her head and said to Qin Chuan, "When I came in, I saw you lying on the ground, but I didn't notice anything special." Qin Chuan nodded slightly and understood. It seemed that the weakened version of the spirit-receiving talisman array would dissipate soon after losing the support of his spiritual power. Otherwise, the spiritual qi in the cultivation room wouldn't have recovered to the normal level so quickly. "Let's go and have breakfast." During breakfast, Yukai didn't mention anything about the banquet last night, and Qin Chuan didn't ask about it. The two's conversation was mainly focused on the upcoming auction in the evening. According to Yukai, she saw a lot of rare treasures on the list sent by the auction, which would definitely be a feast for Qin Chuan's eyes. This also made Qin Chuan look forward to the auction tonight even more. The afternoon was spent in cultivation. After dinner at 6 o'clock in the evening, Qin Chuan and Yukai finally met Aju, who was going to attend the auction. Together, they got on the shuttle to the auction site. The auction was held in the Guang and Trading Company in Xi'an City. As one of the top auction organizers in the Star Dragon Federation, the Guang and Trading Company had branches in every large city in the Federation, and the Guang and Trading Company in Xi'an City was one of the many branches. But even if it was just a branch, the area was as large as 2 football fields, enough to accommodate tens of thousands of customers at the same time, and it didn't feel crowded at all. The Yu family had a dedicated shuttle parking area on the platform above the Guang and Trading Company. After Qin Chuan and the others got off the shuttle, they could directly take the exclusive elevator in the area directly to the box at the auction site. The treatment could be said to be quite good. This was the first time that Qin Chuan enjoyed this kind of senior VIP treatment, which made Qin Chuan once again realize the importance of strength. If the Yu family didn't have the strength to dominate Xi'an City, the Guang and trading company might not have paid so much attention to the Yu family. The box was very large, with an area of 300 square meters, but there were only 3 seats. Obviously, this was the arrangement made by the Guang and trading company in advance after learning how many people from the Yu family would be present. On the walls around the box, there were crystal screens with no blind spots, which allowed the people in the box to clearly see the whole auction site. The view was absolutely wide. Today, there are only 3 of us here, so be casual and don't be restrained. Aju's words were mainly for Qin Chuan. She knew that Qin Chuan had never participated in an auction of this level, so she deliberately reminded Qin Chuan to relax a little and not be too nervous. "I will, thank you." Qin Chuan sat in his seat and watched the auction site through the crystal screen. Although many people had entered, the site was very quiet and not many people were talking. Obviously, these people knew the rules, and no one would make a lot of noise on such an occasion. Knock, knock, knock. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, and then the door of the box was opened from the outside. A handsome young man in a high-end custom-made suit slowly walked in from the outside and said to Aju with a smile, "Sister Aju, you don't mind me coming in uninvited, right?" Looking at the young man who suddenly appeared, Aju frowned slightly and said, "Gua Hao, for the sake of your father, I won't argue with you this time. But if you enter without permission next time, I will break your hand that opened the door." In the face of Aju's cold warning, Gua Hao just smiled and didn't take it to heart. He looked at Qin Chuan and sized him up, and then said with a smile, "You must be Qin Chuan, young Master Qin, who shocked the world in the battle of the Hidden Dragon Arena and killed the demon beast with your own hands. Nice to meet you." "You are?" Qin Chuan was a little surprised. He saw that Gua Hao actually came for him. "I'm ashamed to say this, but that good-for-nothing Wishing is my younger brother." This time, he was able to leave the Cloud Dragon Mountain range alive because of young Master Qin's help. I heard that young Master Qin used 3 Thunder Spirit Stones in order to kill that monstrous beast. Therefore, I specially brought a few Thunder Spirit Stones today to express my gratitude to young Master Qin. While talking, Gua Hao gently clapped his hands, and a waiter behind him walked in front of Qin Chuan with a delicate silver tray. On the tray, 10 Thunder Spirit Stones were neatly placed. The quality was definitely much better than what Qin Chuan got from the Thunder Beast Cave. "It's just a small token of my appreciation. I hope young Master Qin will accept it." In the face of Gua Hao's kindness, Qin Chuan slightly pursed his lips and said, "I'm not a young master. I'm just a nobody. You can call me Qin Chuan, but please don't call me young Master Qin. As for the kindness you said, I can't accept it all." With that, Qin Chuan reached out and picked up 2 Thunder Spirit Stones from the tray, and then said to Gua Hao, "The quality of this Thunder Spirit Stone is good. It should be able to reach the middle grade. One of them is enough to match the 3 ordinary Thunder Spirit Stones I used to lay out the array. As for the other one, it's a thank you gift for saving your brother. In this way, we're even, we don't owe each other anything." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Aju's eyes couldn't help but show a touch of appreciation. With Qin Chuan's background, he could still maintain a calm and rational mentality in the face of such a generous gift. It could be said that his performance was very good. Yukai was also very happy. Although she felt that Qin Chuan would have no problem accepting all of them, she was happy that Qin Chuan only took 2. Worthy of Qin Chuan. Gua Hao looked deeply at Qin Chuan and said, "I hope there will be a chance to deal with you again in the future. Goodbye." Chapter 91. After Gua Hao left the Yu family's box, he turned around and returned to the Gua family's box. Seeing Gua Hao enter the room, several young people sitting on the sofa immediately asked him about the situation with curious faces. "Gua Hao, have you seen that Qin Chuan? What do you think of that kid? If you ask me, why are you so polite to that kid? Isn't he just a genius? Even if he has some talent in talisman arrays, that's all. Don't talk nonsense. Listen to Gua Hao." Everyone was talking and laughing at the same time. They did not take Qin Chuan seriously at all. However, with their family status, there was indeed no need to think too highly of Qin Chuan. "All right, all of you shut up." Gua Hao walked over and sat down. He looked at everyone with a rather serious expression and said, We have all underestimated that Qinchuan. As Guahao spoke, everyone quieted down and patiently waited for Guahao to continue. That kid is probably the most sensible young man I have ever seen, just from the fact that he can control his inner desires and is neither arrogant nor impatient. He is worthy of our attention. Guahao bluntly stated his first impression of Qin Chuan. As the eldest son of the Gua clan, his status was extremely high, and he had seen too many young geniuses. Those people were either arrogant because of their talent, or they were subservient to others. This was the first time he had seen someone like Qin Chuan, who was neither servile nor overbearing. If you can evaluate this Qin Chuan in such a way, then he is a little interesting. A young man with dyed dark blue hair chuckled and said, "I kind of want to get in touch with him. After all, he also saved our Gao Jinyu. I should also thank him. Why don't we go together?" Xiaoning was also saved by him. "I also want to thank him." Another girl with a somewhat average figure said with a smile. However, there was an inexplicable light in her eyes. Obviously, she had other thoughts in her mind. Guahao was very clear about the intentions of these people. Rather than thanking Qin Chuan, it was better to say that they were trying to rope in Qin Chuan. He sneered and said indifferently, "Actually, you don't have to be in a hurry to show up. Qin Chuan does have some ability, but I don't think the Li family will let him go so easily." As he spoke, Guahao looked at the tall figure sitting on the other side and asked, "Li Man, am I right? You really have a lot of nonsense to say." Li Man looked at the crowd indifferently and said coldly, "The day Qin Chuan leaves the Yu clan, you will naturally know the answer." Hearing Li Man's response, everyone couldn't help but look at each other. They all saw a hint of playfulness in each other's eyes. It seemed that the Li family really didn't intend to let Qin Chuan go. This way, there'd be a good show to watch. After being quiet for so long, it was time for Xiong City to be lively. On the other side, after Guahao left, Zhu directly said to Qin Chuan, "I guess that Guahao is just a representative who was pushed out to see you. There must be others who want to see you, but they haven't shown up yet." Qin Chuan smiled slightly and said, "It's the people from the other 4 families." "Yes." Zhu nodded and said, "Your true identity has been exposed. It's impossible for them not to have any interest in you. Guahao's contact with you is just the beginning. There will be more people who will come in contact with you in the future." "There won't be a future." Qin Chuan grinned. "I won't give them a chance." Qin Chuan really wouldn't give those people a chance. After learning about the strength of the Yu clan, he also had a certain understanding of the other 4 families. He knew that he could sit here calmly now because of the influence of the Yu clan. However, the Yu clan couldn't protect him for a lifetime. Therefore, after the auction was over, Qin Chuan was ready to activate the Black Moon badge and wait for Ningya to come and pick him up. He believed that with Ningya, even if those families were arrogant, they wouldn't dare to do anything to him. Of course, if Ningya was not willing to protect him, then he could only admit that he was unlucky. However, the probability of this happening should be very small. Recalling the scene when he first met Ningya, Qin Chuan suddenly felt a little uncertain. No matter what that seductress did, Qin Chuan wouldn't be surprised. "It seems that I have to prepare another way out." Qin Chuan was somewhat helpless. The feeling of survival in the cracks was really too difficult. Ding ding dang dang. With the crisp and pleasant sound of the bell, the huge auction house almost quieted down in an instant. Qin Chuan looked at the ripples that were visible to the naked eye and was a little surprised. Those were the fluctuations of spiritual power. That's the sound of Guang, and the signature magic weapon of Guang and Bell. The real Guang and Bell is in the headquarters of Guang and House, and the one here is just a replica. The sound of the Guang and Bell with a special hammer has the effect of concentrating and calming the qi. Often listening to it is of great benefit to polishing the state of mind. Zhu faintly explained to Qin Chuan. This is also some of the benefits of Guang and House's auction for the customers. After hearing Zhu's explanation, Qin Chuan silently felt the changes in his state of mind. Sure enough, his state of mind was much calmer than before. But after the auction starts, the scene will be lively again. Zhu pursed her lips and smiled. After all, this is an auction. It's really not appropriate to be so quiet. Just as Zhu was talking, a beautiful figure in a bright red dress slowly ascended the auction stage in the center of the auction house. It was a very beautiful woman, exuding amazing charm from head to toe, which made people have an impulse to get close to her. Yukai saw Qin Chuan staring at the woman in the red dress, and could not help but stretch out her hand and pinch Qin Chuan's arm. The pain made Qin Chuan instantly come to his senses and turn his eyes to Yukai. Yukai pouted and said to Qin Chuan, "That woman's appearance is actually ordinary. What's good about her is her seduction skill. Don't fall for it." Hearing Yukai words, Qin Chuan let out a long breath and said, "Now, I suddenly understand why the gong and bell was rung before. If it weren't for the gong and bell, people would have blushed when they saw the woman in the red dress. But even so, there were still many people with weak minds who were fascinated by her. I'm Hong Xiao. Welcome to the auction of Guang and House. This time, I will be the auctioneer. If my performance is not good, I hope you can forgive me." The woman in the red dress, who called herself Hong Xiao, looked at the crowd with seductive eyes and said with a smile, "I won't talk nonsense. Let's start today's topic. Let's welcome the first auction item today, the Blue Water Sword, a middle-grade magic weapon produced by the Divine Workshop. Chapter 92. As we all know, the products of the Divine Workshop must be of high quality. Although this Blue Water Sword is only a middle-grade magic weapon, a large amount of water essence has been integrated into it during the forging process, which makes the Blue Water Sword more compatible with water runes. If we can find a rune array master who is proficient in water runes to inscribe runes on this Blue Water Sword, there's a great chance that the quality of this Blue Water Sword could be upgraded to high grade. While speaking, Hong Xiao pulled out the Blue Water Sword from the scabbard. The water blue sword body emitted a soft light, as if the water was fluctuating, which was extremely magical. Ladies and gentlemen, the starting price of the Blue Water Sword is 1,000,000 Star Dragon coins, and each increment must not be less than 100,000 Star Dragon coins. As Hong Xiao's voice fell, the auction site immediately became lively. Many people with water runes began to bid enthusiastically. In just a few breaths, the price of this Blue Water Sword had been raised to 1,800,000 Star Dragon coins. Seeing the crazy bidding, Qin Chuan could not help but click his tongue. It was really worthy of being a large auction held once every half a year. The first item to be auctioned was unexpectedly so popular. "Qin Chuan, do you want this Blue Water Sword?" Yukai had been paying attention to the changes in Qin Chuan's expression. When she noticed the fiery light in Qin Chuan's eyes, she could not help but be a little puzzled. Qin Chuan was of thunder attribute, so why was he so interested in the water attribute Blue Water Sword? "I don't want this Blue Water Sword, but I didn't expect that a middle-grade magic weapon could be auctioned for such a sky-high price," Qin Chuan said with some emotion. "In the past, I was really no different from a frog at the bottom of a well. I was too inexperienced." Qin Chuan was very glad to be able to participate in this auction. Although he might not be able to afford anything, he could definitely broaden his horizons and mind, which would be of great benefit to his future growth. Hearing Qin Chuan's self-deprecation, Zhu couldn't help but look at Qin Chuan again. If someone else said such a thing, she would think that it was a lack of self-confidence. But when these words came from Qin Chuan's mouth, she felt that it was a clear self-awareness, which was an extremely rare quality. Only those who had a clear understanding of their own shortcomings could clearly understand what they needed and what they should do in the future. Such people would definitely go further than others. At least for now, Qin Chuan was already at the forefront of his peers. Even compared to the geniuses of the upper-class families, he was not much worse. Soon, the price of the Blue Water Sword had been raised to 3 million. At this time, no one was bidding anymore. After Hong Xiao counted down from 3, she raised her hand and knocked on the gong and bell beside her with a delicate golden hammer. She smiled and said, "Congratulations to Mr. 1086 for buying the Blue Water Sword at the price of 3 million. Next, let's continue to auction the second item. The middle-grade magic weapon, the Immortal Boots, is also a product of the Divine Workshop. But unlike the blue water sword, the immortal boots has been inscribed with a third-level immortal walking talisman array. It can allow you to travel thousands of miles in a day and ride the clouds in mist. Hong Xiu's words caused a huge sensation at the scene. It was well known that only the powerful cultivators of the gold core stage could fly in the air. But the immortal boots could let cultivators below the gold core stage have the ability to fly in the air with the help of the talisman array. Just based on this point, the value of the immortal boots was equal to that of a top-grade magic weapon. Before the auction began, our Guang and Bank had tested the immortal boots. Cultivators at the first level of the Qi refining stage could fly in the air for 15 seconds with the help of the immortal boots, while cultivators at the first level of the foundation establishment stage could fly in the air for 10 minutes with the help of the immortal boots. The faster the speed, the shorter the time. As for the specific data, I think the friend who bought the immortal boots can calculate it himself. Now, the bidding for the immortal boots begins. The starting price is 3 million Star Dragon coins, and each increment must be no less than 100,000. 5 million. I'm determined to get the immortal boots. 6 million. 7 million. In the blink of an eye, the price of the immortal boots had gone straight to 10 million. Even so, there were still a lot of people who refused to give up. They kept bidding, showing that they were determined to get the immortal boots. In the private room, Qin Chuan looked at the pair of luxurious boots on the auction stage with envy. If he had the money, he would also want a pair of boots like this. Whether it was during a battle or when he was running for his life, it would be of great help. It was simply a must-have weapon for cultivators below the golden core stage to travel the Jianghu. It's also a middle-grade magic weapon, but because of different uses, its value will be different. Zhu looked at the lively scene of the auction and said with some emotion, "For cultivators at the foundation establishment stage, the importance of the immortal boots is equivalent to a second life. But for cultivators at the Qi refining stage, it's a bit useless." Qin Chuan couldn't help but turn to look at Zhu. He could hear that Zhu was implicitly reminding him that even if he got the immortal boots, with his strength, he couldn't exert the full effect of the immortal boots. On the contrary, because of his low cultivation, it was easy to arouse the malice of others. "This Zhu thinks too highly of me. The price of the immortal boots has been raised to 16 million. How can I afford it? Could it be?" Qin Chuan seemed to have thought of something and couldn't help but look at Yu Kai'er, who was sitting next to him. He pursed his lips, and, as if talking to himself, he said in a low voice, "I'm here to broaden my horizons. I don't intend to bid for anything. Even if someone gives me something, I won't accept it. I won't accept a reward without any effort." Yu Kai'er, who was patiently waiting for the opportunity to bid, heard Qin Chuan's words. She couldn't help but be stunned. She turned to look at Qin Chuan and happened to meet Qin Chuan's deep eyes. Her face couldn't help but turn red. She immediately lowered her head and pouted. "If you don't want to buy it, then don't buy it. What's the big deal?" Sitting on the other side, when Zhu saw the performance of Qin Chuan and Yu Kai'er, she couldn't help but quietly breathe a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Qin Chuan was a calm and rational person. Otherwise, if Yu Kai'er replaced Qin Chuan to bid for the immortal boots, would she buy it or not? After this incident, Zhu could be said to be more and more pleasing to the eye for Qin Chuan. "Sister Zhu, I want to ask, how much can my demon core be sold for?" Qin Chuan was now very curious about the value of the demon core. If the demon core was valuable, it wasn't impossible for him to bid for something he was interested in later. The value will probably fluctuate between 20 million and 30 million. Zhu answered Qin Chuan's question without hesitation. If a cultivator with an Earth attribute talent rune urgently needed an Earth attribute demon core, maybe the value of this demon core would be higher. Chapter 93. Qin Chuan was very surprised by Zhu's answer. He didn't expect that a small demon nucleus would be so valuable. Don't underestimate that demon core of yours. Although our human clan often fights with the demon clan, we can only obtain some demon cores when we have an absolute advantage over the demon clan. In other situations, Almost all defeated demon clans will choose to self-destruct their demon cores, not giving us a chance to obtain them at all. Therefore, demon cores have always been extremely precious. If you hadn't killed the demon beast with a thunderous force, this demon nucleus may not have been intact. Hearing Aju's explanation, Qin Chuan nodded thoughtfully. He originally thought that every time he killed a demonic beast, he would be able to obtain a demonic core. But now, it seemed that he was thinking too much. Sure enough, I still know too little. Qin Chuan sighed helplessly. Being born in the slums had greatly limited Qin Chuan's vision and imagination. It was no exaggeration to say that in the past, Qin Chuan had been running around almost every day to make a living. There was no chance for him to learn about demon beasts. Naturally, he had no way to understand the difficulty and specific value of demon nuclei. This may be basic knowledge for others, but for Qin Chuan, it was really a knowledge blind spot. It's not enough to just travel thousands of miles. I still have to read thousands of books. Nowadays, it was the era of network information. Technology was unprecedentedly developed. Almost all information could be queried through the optical computer. Qin Chuan felt that it was necessary for him to take a certain amount of time to cram some basic knowledge. Otherwise, if he didn't know anything and needed to ask others, what was the difference between him and a fool? As if seeing Qin Chuan's thoughts, Zhu smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "Our Yu family has a library, which is all-encompassing. If you need, I can help you arrange it. It's not troublesome." Qin Chuan heard the words and looked at Zhu with some surprise, then nodded gently and said very sincerely, "Thank you." In the end, the boots of immortality were bought by customer number 89 for 28 million. Although the price was a little high, it was still within a reasonable range. The third item is an extremely well-preserved Earth-type demon core. Hong Xiu smiled and reached out to pick up the thumb-sized demon nucleus from the golden tray beside her. She showed it to everyone on the scene in front of the camera. Everyone can see that this demon core is a complete whole, and there aren't any cracks or signs of damage on it. It's an extremely rare demon core. No matter if it's used for cultivation or used to forge magic treasures, it's an excellent choice. Let's begin the auction now. The starting price is 10 million Star Dragon coins, and each increment must be no less than 1 million. Demon cores were hard to come by, and complete demon cores were even harder to come by. To the cultivators with Earth attribute innate talismans present, they were absolutely treasures that couldn't be missed. When Qin Chuan saw the demon core, he immediately recognized it as his own. At this moment, he couldn't help but look forward to seeing what kind of price this demon core would fetch. Soon, the price of this demon core was raised from 10 million to 23 million. At this time, most people had withdrawn for the competition, and only 2 people were still bidding. 25 million, 26 million. Brother, this demon core is extremely important to me. How about giving it to me? 28 million. Sorry, I'm also determined to get this demon core. 30 million. Neither of them was willing to give in. In the end, the price of this demon core was raised to 36 million, which was far beyond Qin Chuan's expectations. The innate talismans of these 2 people should be of Earth attribute. They probably have reached a bottleneck in their cultivation and need the help of the rich Earth spiritual power in this demon core to make a breakthrough. Therefore, the bidding price of your demon core has reached its current height. Zhu smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "You're lucky to meet 2 people who are in urgent need of this demon core." Qin Chuan also felt very lucky. The higher the price of this demon core, the greater his harvest. When he encountered something he wanted, he would naturally have more confidence. Just when Qin Chuan was looking forward to the 2 people to raise the price, one of them chose to give up. In the end, the price of this demon core was fixed at 40 million, which had greatly exceeded the value of this demon core. 40 million. For Qin Chuan, who had a net worth of 1 million, 40 million was definitely an astronomical figure, but after seeing some big scenes, Qin Chuan also knew that 40 million may be a lot for ordinary people, but for this auction, it was just a drizzle. Therefore, Qin Chuan was not too excited. Next, the 4th and 5th auction items were sold for higher and higher prices. In the end, a tight soft armor was sold for a sky-high price of $140 million. When the 10th auction item, the limited edition shuttle of Skywalker number 9, was sold for $320 million, the warm-up stage of the auction was finally over, and the next highlight was finally about to appear. Everyone, the next auction items will no longer accept Star Dragon coins as payment. We will collect spiritual value points. If there are friends who need to exchange spiritual value points, you can press the red button next to the seat, and there will naturally be an attendant to serve you. The so-called spiritual value points referred to spirit stones. A low-grade spirit stone was equivalent to 1 spiritual value point. Middle-grade and upper-grade spirit stones were converted by 100 times. Spiritual value points were the common currency among cultivators. Generally, when purchasing more precious resources, they would use spiritual value points to conduct transactions. Few cultivators would use common currency like Star Dragon coins. It was reasonable for Guang and Guild to use spiritual value points to bid in the second half of the auction. Hong Xiu smiled slightly, rang the Guang bell, and said loudly, "The next auction item is from the Divine Workshop. It's the best magic treasure, flying fish shuttle." Hearing Hong Xiu's words, the audience suddenly exclaimed, "The best magic treasure, flying fish shuttle." No one had expected that the highlight would be so exciting. The flying fish shuttle was a flying shuttle. It was named because it looked like a big fish. Not only could it fly, but it could also travel quickly in the water. But this was not the point. The point was that the flying fish shuttle was a magic treasure that could really travel in the universe. Qin Chuan looked at the introduction of the flying fish shuttle on the crystal screen, and his breathing could not help but become a little rapid. Traveling the universe was something that everyone had dreamed of, and if he wanted to make it a reality, the flying fish shuttle was absolutely necessary. Although the flying fish shuttle was a supreme-grade magic treasure, its true value was definitely not inferior to the rumored Taoist artifacts. Chapter 94. The appearance of the flying fish shuttle set off a great wave in the auction venue. Everyone's eyes were focused on the 3-meter-high and 6-meter-long flying fish-shaped shuttle on the exhibition stand. Everyone's eyes were fiery, and they couldn't wait to take it for themselves. The flying fish shuttle can be said to be the best quality and the most mature technology among the many small shuttles that can travel in the universe. It is also the famous work of the Divine Workshop. It is said that each flying fish shuttle takes at least a year to complete from the beginning to the end, which leads to the production of flying fish shuttles being very low and extremely precious. A Zhu said with some emotion, "Such a shuttle that can travel freely in the universe is definitely a treasure that all Starry Sky adventurers dream of." The so-called Starry Sky adventurers were cultivators who explored ancient ruins and traces of other civilizations in the universe. These people often had powerful strength and rich financial resources, both of which were indispensable. Hearing A Zhu's words, Qin Chuan asked with some curiosity, "Does your Yu family also sponsor Starry Sky adventurers?" As far as Qin Chuan knew, almost every big family would silently sponsor some Starry Sky adventurers, helping them explore ancient ruins or traces of other civilizations in the universe outside the Star Dragon Federation, so as to expand the family's influence in the Star Dragon Federation. Yu family had such a huge force in Xi'an City, it would not be difficult for them to establish a team of Starry Sky adventurers. A Zhu smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "Didn't Kai mention it to you? The previous patriarch of our Yu family, Kai Er's grandfather, was a powerful Starry Sky adventurer." Hearing A Zhu's answer, Qin Chuan couldn't help but be a little surprised. He really didn't expect that Yu Kai Er's grandfather was a Starry Sky adventurer. This isn't a secret in Western Sun City. Back then, the reason our Yu family was able to rise so quickly and become the #1 family in Western Sun City was because Kai Er's grandfather discovered a ruin from the Great Chaotic Era in the universe and obtained a great opportunity from it. Because of this, the Yu family was able to develop so quickly and reach the height it is today. Speaking of the rise of the Yu family, Aju's face couldn't help but reveal a touch of pride. She had always admired Yu Kai-er's grandfather very much. She once dreamed of becoming a starry sky adventurer, but to become a starry sky adventurer, she had to at least have the strength of Gold Course stage. With her current cultivation, she was still far from that. Grandfather has been stationed in the ruins all year round and hasn't returned for 2 years. Speaking of her grandfather, Yu Kai began to miss the old man who was exceptionally kind and doting on her. Soon, in another year, it will be the rotation period. Then, the old man will be able to come back. Aju smiled and said to Yu Kai, "You can see your grandpa during the summer vacation of your freshman year. I think he must miss you very much." I really didn't expect the rise of the Yu family to be related to the ancient ruins. Qin Xuan sighed in his heart. He could not help but look at the flying fish shuttle on the display platform. There were opportunities everywhere in the ancient ruins. It was no wonder that everyone present was so enthusiastic about the flying fish shuttle. The bidding starts now. The starting price of the flying fish shuttle is 100,000 spiritual value points. Each bid must not be lower than 10,000 spiritual value points. As Hong Xiu's voice fell, the customers in the ordinary seats did not make a move. Most of the people who were bidding for the flying fish shuttle were the VIPs in the private rooms. Soon, the price of the flying fish shuttle was raised to an astonishing price of 300,000 spiritual value points. If one spiritual value point was equivalent to 10,000 Star Dragon coins, 300,000 spiritual value points would be equivalent to 3 billion Star Dragon coins. This amount of money was more than enough to buy a luxurious flying ship like the Yu family. And this was just the beginning of the bidding for the flying fish shuttle. When the price of the flying fish shuttle reached 500,000 spiritual value points, Aju finally made a move. With this move, she directly added 50,000 spiritual value points. 550,000. Aju's voice was very calm. However, this calm voice succeeded in calming down the heated atmosphere for a moment. This was because the voice came from the second private room of the auction site. As everyone knew, this was the private room of the Yu family. And the Yu family relied on the Starry Sky adventure to rise. This time, the Yu family participated in the bidding for the flying fish shuttle. Obviously, they would not give up so easily. The VIP in the second private room bid 550,000 spiritual value points. Is there any higher bid? As far as I know, this flying fish shuttle is the only product of the Divine Workshop in recent years. If you miss this opportunity, you don't know when you will see the flying fish shuttle again in the auction. Hong Xiu's words successfully aroused everyone's desire to get the flying fish shuttle. Soon, the VIP in the fourth private room bid 560,000 spiritual value points. 600,000. Aju calmly said the new price as if it was just 600,000 Star Dragon coins. Looking at Aju's calm appearance, Qin Xuan was really shocked. Was this the foundation of the Yu family? For a moment, Qin Xuan looked at Yu Kai with a strange expression. It seemed that living off a woman was not something unacceptable. Because of Aju's strong move, the auction site was so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. Everyone's eyes were focused on the several private rooms suspended in the air. Everyone was very curious. Now that the Yu family had made a move, who else could compete with them? 610,000, 650,000. Aju's bid had always been overwhelming. She would never bid 10,000 or 10,000. Only people at this level knew the psychological game in her heart. 650,000. Are there any higher bidders? Hong Xiu was very satisfied with this bid. After all, the last time the flying fish shuttle appeared in the auction, it was only sold for 600,000 spiritual value points. But this time, before the dust settled, it had exceeded the previous bid by 50,000 spiritual value points. Her task could be said to have been completed successfully. Just when Hong Xiu was about to ring the gong and bell, something amazing happened. Suddenly, someone in the first private room, who had been silent, made a bid and directly raised the price to 800,000 spiritual value points. Is the flying fish shuttle only worth 650,000 spiritual value points now? Humph! The Shimin family bid 800,000 spiritual value points. Wow! The scene suddenly boiled up. 800,000 spiritual value points was too high. It was 150,000 spiritual value points. 800,000 spiritual value points. The VIP in the first private room bid 800,000 spiritual value points. Is there a higher bidder? Even Hong Xiao, who had been on the battlefield for a long time, could not help but be excited at this time. This was a sky-high price of 800,000 spiritual value points. It turned out to be the Shimin family. Aju frowned slightly and could not help but hesitate. Before coming, the head of the family had told her that the old man had sent a message back, saying that there would be a big change in the starry sky in the near future. The flying fish shuttle must be obtained, and they must try their best to get it. However, the price of the flying fish shuttle had been raised to 800,000 spiritual value points. She could no longer make the decision and had to ask the head of the family. Chapter 95. Just when Aju was about to contact the patriarch had already sent a message in advance, indicating Aju to give up this competition. Although Aju was a little surprised, she did not hesitate. She slightly pursed her lips and lightly said, "Since the Shimin clan wants this flying fish shuttle so much, then our Yu clan naturally has to fulfill your wish. We will temporarily give up this bidding." Humph, deliberately mystifying. Obviously, the Shimin clan in the first box was not interested in Aju's words. They even faintly disdained her. However, Aju did not care about the Shimin clan's attitude and calmly dealt with it. Finally, the bidding for the flying fish shuttle was settled. In the end, the Shimin clan won with a sky-high price of 800,000 spirit coins and successfully obtained the flying fish shuttle. The auction of the flying fish shuttle had already ended. Hong Xiao had already rung the Guang'an bell, but the scene was still full of discussion. After all, everyone had just witnessed a transaction worth nearly 1,000,000 spirit value points. Such a huge amount of transaction was not often seen. "Everyone, the next auction item is a strange stone." While speaking, Hong Xiao removed the red cloth on the tray beside her and placed a fist-sized stone on the tray in front of everyone's eyes. This stone was obtained by a starry sky adventurer from an ancient relic. It's invulnerable. Our Guang, an association, once bombarded this stone with a powerful meteor-class laser cannon, but it didn't cause any damage to this stone. There's video evidence. As soon as Hong Xiao's voice fell, a video was suddenly displayed on the huge crystal screen. It was the video of the tester bombarding the stone with a meteor-class laser cannon. From the video, everyone could see that no matter from which angle the tester bombarded the stone would be sent flying. However, after a careful examination, it was discovered that the meteor-class laser cannon could not leave any trace on the stone at all. After the video finished playing, everyone couldn't help but feel a trace of curiosity towards this peculiar rock. It must be known that the meteor-ranked single-soldier laser cannon was the most powerful weapon that a single soldier could use in battle. Not to mention destroying a rock, even a middle-grade defensive magic treasure will be shattered by it. Since this rock was able to remain unscathed under the repeated bombardment of the meteor-ranked single-soldier laser cannon, then how did this rock shatter in the first place? After many studies, our Guang and Trading Company did not find out the origin of this stone, nor did we analyze its material. We are unable to provide detailed information for everyone. If there are friends who are interested in collecting such items, then you can bid now. The starting price of this strange stone is 1,000 spirit value points. Each bid must not be less than 100 spirit value points. Obviously, the Guang and Trading Company did not expect this stone to be auctioned at all. From the start of the auction until now, there was finally an awkward silence for the first time. Although the stone was peculiar, there was nothing special about it other than its hardness. Furthermore, 1,000 spiritual value points was not a small sum of money to the ordinary customers present. Therefore, no one was willing to bid for it. Why? Don't you have friends who want to collect it? Hong Xiao was a little helpless. Although she expected the auction of this strange stone to be awkward, she did not expect it to be so awkward. Just when Hong Xiu thought that this strange stone would not be auctioned, a clear voice suddenly came from the second box. I bid 1,000 spirit value points. As the voice fell, everyone could not help but look at the second box. The Yu family actually made a bid. Could it be that the Yu family recognized this strange stone? After all, the Yu family started out as a starry sky adventurer, and this stone came from the ruins. It seemed reasonable for the Yu family to recognize the origin of this stone. Just when everyone was thinking about why the Yu family would bid for this strange stone, Yuker and Zhu in the second box were also very surprised. They did not expect that Qin Xuan would suddenly bid without warning. Moreover, he wanted to buy a stone that had nothing but toughness. Sister Zhu, I remember that according to the exchange rate, 40 million should be able to be exchanged for 4,000 spirit value points. Qin Xuan pursed his lips tightly, staring at the strange stone that was placed on the exhibition table. His heart was about to jump out of his throat. With our Yu family's membership in the Guang and Bank, you will not be charged any handling fee when you exchange. You can indeed exchange for 4,000 spirit value points. However, I'm more curious. Why are you interested in this stone? Zhu was a little curious. With Qin Xuan's character, he should not bid for no reason. It's not easy to participate in an auction. If I don't buy something, wouldn't it be a pity? Qin Xuan grinned and said, this strange stone has some research value, and it's the only thing I can afford, so I want to buy it. I'll treat it as a souvenir of my first auction. Hearing Qin Xuan's explanation, Zhu did not think too much about it. Even with the Guang and Bank's ability, they could not detect the uniqueness of this stone. How could Qin Xuan study it? She guessed that he just wanted to collect it as a souvenir. As for whether Qin Xuan would recognize the origin of this stone, Zhu did not even think about it. With Qin Xuan's background and Qin Xuan's previous performance, she could see that Qin Xuan was extremely lacking in some aspects of knowledge. If Qin Xuan could recognize the stone that even the resourceful Guang and Bank could not recognize, then it would be strange. The VIP in the second box has bid 1,000 spirit value points. Is there a higher bidder? As Hong Xiu's voice fell, someone tried to bid 1,100 spirit value points. Soon, the price of the strange stone had been raised to 1,900 spirit value points. During this period, Qin Xuan did not bid again. The person who bid 1,900 spirit value points saw that Qin Xuan did not bid, and he could not help but panic. Could it be that the other party just casually offered a price and simply wanted to buy something and did not really take a fancy to this strange stone? Just when this person was regretting in his heart, Qin Xuan finally bid 3,000 spirit value points. If anyone is willing to pay a higher price, then I'll give it to you. When he shouted this sentence, Qin Xuan's performance was very normal. But in fact, Qin Xuan was so excited that his soul was trembling. If the price of this strange stone was raised to more than 4,000 spirit value points, he might have to borrow money from Zhu. But in this way, some things would not be easy to explain. Hearing the person in the second box clearly say that it was only for collection, finally, no one bid. When Hong Xiu rang the Guang and bell, Qin Xuan swallowed his heart that had jumped to his throat back into his stomach, and his whole body relaxed. It was really right to come to this auction. Chapter 96. Since he won the bid for the strange stone, Qin Xuan's mind was no longer on the auction. If it weren't for the fact that he was with his Zhu and Yukai, he would have already taken the strange stone and left the auction house. In the eyes of others, it might be a stone, but in Qin Xuan's eyes, it was a fragment of a stone pillar. Qin Xuan would never forget the scene when he touched the bronze square box for the first time. When Qin Xuan saw the stone for the first time, he felt that the sea of runes hidden deep in his brain suddenly fluctuated violently. The scene of the shattering of the continent reappeared in his mind, especially in detail. After one of the huge stone pillars shattered, a fist-sized fragment splashed into the depths of the universe and disappeared. But now, the fragment that had disappeared for countless years appeared on the exhibition platform of Guang and Trading Company, and became an auction item whose origin was unknown to anyone. This was also the reason why Qin Xuan wanted to buy this stone, even if he had to go bankrupt. Although there were many best items in the auction, Qin Xuan was not interested in them at all. When the auction was finally over, the Guang and trading company finally sent the stone to Qin Xuan. Qin Xuan tried his best to appear calm and collected when collecting the strange stone. However, when his hand touched the strange stone, he couldn't help but tremble slightly. Yukai also saw this scene. It doesn't matter. People who participate in the auction for the first time will be nervous. You've already done a good job. Yukai saw Qin Xuan's tense expression and trembling hands. She thought that Qin Xuan was a little nervous because it was his first time dealing with this kind of thing. So, she comforted Qin Xuan, trying to calm Qin Xuan down. Qin Xuan heard this and smiled reluctantly at Yukai. He seemed to be a little embarrassed and said, "I am indeed a little nervous." Qin Xuan followed Yukai's words. However, the reason why he was so nervous was not because it was his first auction, but because he had already obtained the stone. This stone looked nothing special, but when Qin Xuan reached out and held it, the stone suddenly became hot, making Qin Xuan feel like he was holding a red-hot soldering iron. But in order not to let others notice the difference, Qin Xuan could only try his best to endure the burning pain. "Let's go." Aju just glanced at Qin Xuan and did not suspect anything because of Qin Xuan's slightly strange behavior. She only thought that it was the first time Qin Xuan experienced this kind of thing, so it was inevitable that he would be a little flustered. When they finally returned to the Yu family, because it was already a little late, Qin Xuan naturally refused Yukai's invitation for supper and directly returned to his room. The moment he entered the room, Qin Xuan, who had endured all the way, finally could not hold back anymore. He swung his hand and threw the stone. Clang! The stone fell on the exquisite floor, making a crisp sound. It still looked ordinary and had no special features. However, what made Qin Xuan heave a sigh of relief was that after he threw away the strange stone, the burning sensation in his palm finally subsided. Phew! Qin Xuan breathed a long sigh of relief, and his mood suddenly became a little excited. Although he did not know the name of the continent, nor did he know what the stone pillar was, he was sure that this stone, which evolved from the fragments of the stone pillar, was definitely not simple. Involuntarily, Qin Xuan looked at the bronze ring on his left little finger. On the way back, he had been restraining himself from letting the stone get close to the bronze ring. Now, he wanted to try and see if the bronze ring would have any special reaction after coming into contact with the stone. At that moment, Qin Xuan picked up the strange stone from the ground and endured the burning sensation as he entered the cultivation room. Then he carefully placed the strange stone on the ground and extended his left hand to place the bronze ring close to the strange stone. At the instant the bronze ring came into contact with the rock, a strand of dazzling and resplendent golden light suddenly erupted from the rock. In the next moment, the rock actually shattered with a bang, and then a small golden sword that was only the length of a pinky finger was born from within it. This sudden turn of events stunned Qin Xuan. He never would have thought that a sword would jump out from this strange stone. Looking at the small golden sword floating quietly in front of him, Qin Xuan curiously stretched out his hand, wanting to grab the small golden sword and observe it carefully. However, to his surprise, the small golden sword dodged his hand. Qin Xuan was a little stunned. He tried to reach out his hand again, but it was dodged again. When he increased the speed of his hand, the small golden sword dodged even faster. This can't be a living thing, right? Qin Xuan could not help but have such an absurd thought. At this moment, the small golden sword suddenly flashed and arrived in front of Qin Xuan in an instant. The tip of the sword was pointed at Qin Xuan's forehead, and then it gently moved up twice, as if to signal Qin Xuan to raise his hand. Could it really be alive? Qin Xuan was a little confused. What did he buy? As if it felt that Qin Xuan's behavior was too stupid, the small golden sword impatiently circled Qin Xuan twice, and then with a whoosh, it shot straight between Qin Xuan's eyebrows. Then, like a stone falling into water, it strangely disappeared. All of this happened too quickly. Qin Xuan had no time to react. When he realized what had happened, he hurriedly reached out to touch the space between his eyebrows. However, he did not feel the existence of the small golden sword, nor did he feel the wound. Where did that thing go? Qin Xuan glanced around, but there was no trace of the small golden sword. At this moment, Qin Xuan suddenly felt a tremor in his brain. The small golden sword that had disappeared strangely appeared in his brain, floating above his talent rune. F*CK. No matter how good Qin Xuan's mental fortitude was, he could not help but curse at this time. He never thought that the small golden sword could enter his brain. When Qin Xuan tried to guide the small golden sword out of his brain, the small golden sword violently rejected Qin Xuan's idea. Then the sword waved and decisively cut off the connection with Qin Xuan's mind, as if silently saying to Qin Xuan, "Have you seen a red exclamation mark before?" Faced with this incomparably strange thing, Qin Xuan felt uncomfortable. He had clearly bought a strange stone. How did the strange stone become an ancestor in the blink of an eye? Chapter 97. Qin Xuan repeatedly tried to contact the small golden sword, but to no avail. He could not help but have a ridiculous thought. He seemed to have been blacklisted by the arrogant small golden sword. What the hell is this thing? Qin Xuan felt that his brain was not enough. He looked at the shattered stones on the ground and felt his heart bleed. He had spent 3,000 spiritual value points to buy this treasure, but it had actually blacklisted him. How could he explain himself? Fortunately, although the small golden sword was not under his control, it did not harm him. Since the small golden sword was willing to stay in his mind, he would let it stay there for the time being. After all, he could not do anything to the small golden sword. After thinking through this, Qin Xuan did not give up and tried to contact the small golden sword one last time. The friend request that he sent out was like a stone sinking into the sea. He did not receive any response. He helplessly shook his head and gathered the shattered stones together, preparing to glue them together. This was to prevent people from asking about the mysterious stone's whereabouts, and he would not be able to explain himself. However, Qin Xuan did not expect that when he lightly touched the fragments, the originally indestructible fragments would turn into a pile of dust. Seeing this scene, Qin Xuan was stunned for a moment. Then he understood that the indestructible thing was not the stones, but the small golden sword. Sooner or later, I will find out where you came from. After resting for an entire night, Qin Xuan woke up at 6 in the morning. He did not immediately start his morning exercise, but instead took out the black moon emblem. According to what Ningyi had said, he only needed to activate the emblem after advancing to the qi condensation stage. Then, Ningyi would sense it and come to his aid. Now that there was not much time left until the college entrance exams, it was about time for him to report to the Black Moon Combat Academy. When Qin Xuan tried to channel his spiritual energy into the Black Moon emblem, a sharp needle suddenly extended from the emblem and pierced into Qin Xuan's finger, extracting a drop of Qin Xuan's blood. Immediately after, Qin Xuan felt that there was a faint blood connection between him and the Black Moon emblem. Is this blood recognition? This badge is actually an artifact. Qin Xuan was very surprised as he looked at the Black Moon badge in his hand, which was emitting a lustrous light. He never thought that the first magic tool in his life would actually be the Black Moon badge. La. I'm happy, Lele. Welcome to the Black Moon Combat Academy, student Qin Xuan. Welcome to the Black Moon Combat Academy as a trainee. Just as Qin Xuan was feeling surprised, a cute thumb-sized figure suddenly appeared above the Black Moon emblem. It stood on the emblem and spun around like a fairy. Student Qin Xuan, I know that you must have many questions that you want to ask me. Don't be anxious. Take your time. I'll answer them one by one. Lele stopped dancing and stood charmingly on the emblem. She looked at Qin Xuan with a smile and said, "Let me introduce myself first. I'm the Black Moon Combat Academy's new student guide. You can call me Lele. My task is to guide the new students to the Black Moon Combat Academy and answer their questions about the academy. Of course, the questions can't be personal or Lele will refuse to answer." Chuan never thought that the Black Moon Combat Academy's new student guide would be an artificial intelligence. You said that you're responsible for my guide? Shouldn't it be the mentor who guides me to the academy? For some reason, Chuan had a bad premonition in his heart. The mentor is only responsible for recruiting new students. He's not responsible for guiding them to the academy. Lei smiled and said to Chuan, "The new students have to rely on their own abilities to report to the academy under Lei's guidance." Chuan's face darkened when he heard this. He could not help but grit his teeth and say, "I knew that seductress wasn't reliable. A woman's mouth was a liar." After knowing that Ningyu would not appear to guide him, Chuan did not harp on this issue and continued to ask Lei questions. "You said that I was a trainee. What did that mean?" "In the Black Moon Combat Academy, a trainee should not be a freshman, right?" Student Chuan, although you've already obtained the Black Moon emblem, if you don't arrive at the Black Moon Combat Academy on time and register successfully, you will lose the qualifications to become an official student of the Black Moon Combat Academy. You can only study in the Black Moon Combat Academy as an auditing student. The privileges and benefits granted to official students and auditing students in the Black Moon Combat Academy are vastly different. After hearing Lei's explanation, Chuan's face could not help but darken again. He had never thought that advancing to the Qi condensation realm and activating the Black Moon emblem was only the beginning of the Black Moon Combat Academy's test for him. He did not even have the qualifications to become an official student of the Black Moon Combat Academy. Looking at the smiling Lei, Chuan had nowhere to vent the anger in his heart. He could only sullenly ask, "I want to know where the Black Moon Combat Academy is and how long is the examination period." The Black Moon Combat Academy is located in the Azure Ancient City. It is 24,000 kilometers away from Xi'ang City, where student Chuan is. The examination period starts from the day the Black Moon emblem is activated, which is a total of 60 days. It was not difficult to travel 24,000 kilometers in 60 days. What made Chuan curious was the Azure Ancient City. According to Chuan's knowledge, there is no such city in the Star Dragon Federation. Where is the Azure Ancient City? Do you have a map? Chuan asked Lei again. Perhaps it was because he knew too little that he had never heard of the Azure Ancient City. However, as long as he had a map, he would definitely know where the Azure Ancient City was located in the Star Dragon Federation. The Azure Ancient City is located in the Black Moon Mountain Range. It was a city that was built during the Great Chaos. Although it is located in the Star Dragon Federation, it is not under the jurisdiction of the Star Dragon Federation. Lei's small hand gently moved, and a map appeared in front of Chuan. It was the location of the Black Moon Mountain Range. Black Moon Mountain Range. Chuan could not help but cry out in surprise. The Black Moon Mountain Range was publicly recognized as the most dangerous mountain range in the Star Dragon Federation. The Black Moon Combat Academy was actually built in the Black Moon Mountain Range. No wonder the Black Moon Combat Academy was named after the Black Moon. Looking at the Azure Ancient City in the center of the Black Moon Mountain Range on the map, Chuan could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. He said, "You want me to go through the Black Moon Mountain Range alone to report to the academy? Are you trying to kill me?" Even Foundation establishment cultivators did not dare to go too deep into the Black Moon Mountain Range. What was the difference between sending a mere first-level Qi condensation brat to the center of the Black Moon Mountain Range? Where there's a will, there's a way. Lei giggled and said to Chuan, "What if you're only missing an arm or a leg and you're not dead?" Chuan's mouth fiercely twitched. "You're the one who's missing an arm or a leg. Your whole family is missing an arm or a leg." Chapter 98. Chuan was very sorrowful, especially sorrowful. He originally thought that joining the Black Moon Combat Academy was a wise choice, but he never thought that the Black Moon Combat Academy would be such a scam. This made Chuan have an impulse to contact Zhou Lin and ask her to join the Cosmic Sky Academy. But an impulse was just an impulse. After calming down, Chuan decided to go to the Black Moon Mountain Range and give it a try. What if it worked? If I don't try, how will I know I can't? Qin Chuan sat up from his bed with a bitter face and a long sigh. 2 months seemed like a long time, but the Black Moon Mountain Range was filled with danger. He had stayed in the Cloud Dragon Mountain Range for 3 months and still didn't dare to get too close to the center. So what about the Black Moon Mountain Range? Therefore, he had to hurry to the Black Moon Mountain Range. But before that, he had to safely leave Western Sun City. After thinking it over, Qin Chuan finally decided to ask for help from the people around him. If there was anyone around him who understood Western Sun City the most, and who he trusted the most, it would definitely be Yukai. Without further ado, Qin Chuan used his photon computer to contact Yukai, and quickly saw her. Qin Chuan, why are you looking for me in such a hurry? What's the matter? Yukai happily came to Qin Chuan's room and looked at Qin Chuan with a smile, waiting for Qin Chuan's reply. I'm preparing to leave Western Sun City, but I'm worried that the Leaf family will take revenge on me. Do you have any way to help me? Qin Chuan lightly coughed and awkwardly told Yukai the reason why he was looking for her. As a man, he wanted to rely on a girl to help him escape Western Sun City. This was too shameful. Even if Qin Chuan's skin was very thick, he still felt embarrassed. Yukai knew that Qin Chuan would leave sooner or later, but she didn't think that it would be so early. She looked at Qin Chuan with some reluctance and asked, "Can't you stay for a few more days? When the time comes, I'll arrange for someone to escort you. I guarantee that no one will have any ideas about you." Qin Chuan shook his head and said, "I have something important to do, so I have to leave now." The matter of leaving for the Black Moon Mountain Range should not be delayed and could not be delayed. Seeing Qin Chuan's attitude, Yukai expression, and whispered, "The important thing you're talking about, it can't be that you have to report to the academy, right?" "How did you guess that?" "Qin Chuan? How did you guess?" Seeing the change in Qin Chuan's expression, Yukai couldn't help feeling wronged in her heart. She knew that Qin Chuan was in such a hurry to leave because he wanted to go to Cosmic Star Academy as soon as possible so that he could see the senior sister of his dreams. I know, I'll help you. Yukai You can leave Xiang City. Once you reach a safe place, you can leave at any time. Thank you so much. Qin Chuan was very happy. The Li family should not be able to find out if he left Xiang City without anyone knowing. Seeing Qin Chuan's happy expression, Yukai really wanted to ask Qin Chuan, was he really that impatient to see that senior? But when the words came to her mouth, she could not bring herself to say it. She could only hold it in. This feeling of single-handedly facilitating the meeting of the person she liked with another girl was simply too unbearable. "I'll leave first." Yukai suddenly turned around and left. She was afraid that if she did not leave, she would cry. Seeing Yukai leave in a hurry, Qin Chuan scratched his head in puzzlement. Everything was fine. What was going on? In the afternoon, Yukai arranged for Qin Chuan to hide in the Yu family's transport vehicle. However, the person who did this was not Yukai, but Yukai's personal maidservant. "Miss asked me to tell you that she doesn't want to say goodbye to you in person. If there's a chance in the future, you two should meet again." Hearing the maidservant's words, Qin Chuan nodded and said to the maidservant, "Please also tell your miss that I am looking forward to meeting her next time." After saying this, Qin Chuan took his luggage and walked into the carriage of the transport vehicle. When they were far away from Xiang City, the driver of the transport vehicle would naturally contact him. Vroom, vroom, vroom. Dozens of transport vehicles slowly left the Yu family's manor and drove out of Xiang City. Yukai stood at the highest point of the manor, looking at the transport vehicle slowly leaving the manor with a very complicated expression. She was in a very low mood. "Why didn't you send him off personally?" A Zhu slowly walked over and stood beside Yukai, asking curiously. Yukai bit her lower lip and said in a low voice, "He is in such a hurry to leave because he wants to see his senior sister in advance." A Zhu understood. She looked deeply at Yukai and said, "Since you know that you can't get him, it is better to just give up. Otherwise, you will be in trouble." "I know, but this is the first time I like a boy so much." Tears blurred Yukai Er's eyes, and the long transport vehicle finally disappeared from her sight. In the carriage, Qin Xuan sat on the chair specially prepared for him by Yu Ke, drinking fruit juice and eating snacks. He was enjoying himself quite a bit. Although hiding in the transport vehicle was very secretive and very few people knew about it, Qin Xuan still didn't relax his vigilance. He knew that there was no danger now, but it didn't mean that there wouldn't be any danger after he left the transport vehicle. Therefore, it was very important to eat as much as possible and store up physical strength. After the transport vehicle slowly drove all the way north for 4 hours, it finally left the boundary of Xiang City and began to speed up. When the sun set, the transport vehicle slowly stopped next to a small hillside, where Qin Xuan got off. Standing on the hillside, Qin Xuan watched the transport vehicle go away and then looked back in the direction of Xiang City. Sure enough, there were 2 shuttles flying at high speed. When the 2 shuttles were less than 50 meters away from Qin Xuan, they slowly came to a stop. The cockpits of the 2 shuttles opened at the same time, and a man and a woman walked out from within. I knew you wouldn't let me go so easily. Qin Xuan sighed helplessly. The thing he was most worried about had happened. Qin Xuan, come with us. The woman looked at Qin Xuan indifferently and said, You have been a guest of the Yu family for so many days. It is time for you to come to our Li family. Chapter 99. As early as the first day Qin Xuan had moved into the Yu clan, Li Man had already secretly activated the spies the Li clan had placed in the Yu clan's manor to closely monitor Qin Xuan's every move. Just as Yu Ke had arranged for Qin Xuan to secretly take the transport vehicle to leave, Li Man had already received the news and had been waiting on the road the transport convoy had to pass. Therefore, Li Man wasn't surprised to see Qin Xuan's figure here. Similarly, Qin Xuan wasn't surprised to see Li Man here. If the Li clan really allowed him to leave Xiang City so easily, then they wouldn't be worthy of continuing to establish themselves in Xiang City. Your Li clan is really taking advantage of your power to bully others. I'm just a poor brat with no background and no backing. What else can I do but wait to be captured? Qin Xuan sighed and walked towards Li Man with a helpless expression. It seemed that he really intended to give up resistance and let himself be dealt with. Seeing that Qin Xuan didn't have any intention of resisting, Li Man couldn't help but reveal a disdainful smile. Everyone around her had told her not to underestimate Qin Xuan and to be careful, but a mere first-layer qi condensation ant really wasn't worthy of her attention. Just look, she was simply standing there, but the deterrent force had already made Qin Xuan lose all will to resist and obediently submit. It's good that you're willing to cooperate. Once we reach the Li clan, as long as you're obedient, you naturally won't suffer. Ah, gang, go and tie him up for me. Li Man casually glanced at the subordinate standing next to her and motioned for him to tie up Qin Xuan. Although she wasn't afraid of Qin Xuan resisting, he still had to be tied up. Receiving the signal, Ah Gang took the rope and walked towards Qin Xuan. Just as he approached Qin Xuan, the corners of Qin Xuan's mouth suddenly curled up slightly. He said to him in a strange tone, I'm guessing that your strength shouldn't be at the foundation establishment stage, right? Hearing Qin Xuan's words, Ah Gang instinctively felt a trace of danger and subconsciously stopped approaching Qin Xuan. However, at this time, Qin Xuan moved. He suddenly exerted force on his feet and brazenly pounced towards Ah Gang who was approaching him. Seeing Qin Xuan pouncing towards himself, Ah Gang subconsciously made a counterattack. But when he saw the blue lightning suddenly flickering in Qin Xuan's right palm, his pupils couldn't help but suddenly shrink. This is sizzle. A strong burst of lightning suddenly erupted from Qin Xuan's right palm. It flickered and instantly appeared in front of Ah Gang, ruthlessly hitting Ah Gang's chest. In an instant, the violent lightning surged and turned into a lightning net, completely enveloping Ah Gang. Ah! Under the cover of the lightning net, Ah Gang's face was distorted and ferocious. He opened his mouth and let out a shrill scream. In just a short breath, his combat uniform was destroyed, and his exposed skin instantly became a charred color. Plop! Ah Gang fell to the ground, his body twitching uncontrollably. White foam kept coming out of his mouth, as if he had been seriously injured. Li Man Man looked at Ah Gang, who had fallen to the ground in shock. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Ah Gang, who was at the 6th level of the Qi refining stage, was actually defeated by Qin Chuan in just one move. How is this possible? Li Man Man exclaimed. She couldn't help but turn to look at Qin Chuan, her eyes full of horror. Phew! Qin Chuan let out a long breath, and then he took a deep look at Li Man Man and said, "I'll treat this fellow as interest." Facing Ah Gang, who was much stronger than him, Qin Chuan had to catch him off guard and kill him in one move if he wanted to win. He had pretended to give up resisting and approach Li Man Man. His original intention was to defeat Li Man Man in an instant, then use her to threaten Ah Gang. However, he didn't expect Li Man Man to let Ah Gang tie him up. In desperation, Qin Chuan could only use the ultimate move that he had originally intended to use on Li Man Man on Ah Gang. This so-called ultimate move was a mini version of the domain power that was born after Qin Chuan's brain reached the perfect state. Although the effect of this move was obvious and directly crippled Ah Gang, it also made Qin Chuan extremely tired. He almost didn't have the strength to continue fighting. At this time, he was holding a mid-grade Thunder Spirit Stone that he had obtained from Guahao in his left hand. He was crazily absorbing the thunder and spiritual power within it to replenish his own consumption. Li Man Man could be considered as someone who had seen big scenes. At this time, when she saw Qin Chuan standing still, panting heavily, and sweating all over, she instantly understood. Qin Chuan, with his strength at the 1st level of the Qi refining stage, had defeated Ah Gang, who was at the 6th level of the Qi refining stage, in an instant. He must have used a killer move that consumed a lot of energy. At this time, he was exhausted and had no strength to continue fighting. After understanding this, Li Man Man's mind calmed down. However, when she thought about how she had been frightened by Qin Chuan, who was only at the 1st level of the Qi refining stage, her heart was filled with shame and anger. She couldn't help but shout angrily, "Go to hell!" At this time, Li Man Man already had the intention to kill Qin Chuan. She wanted to make this ant, who had humiliated her, disappear from this world forever. Facing the charging Li Man Man, Qin Chuan didn't care about any elegance. He rolled on the ground and dodged Li Man Man's angry attack in an extremely embarrassing way. Then, he got up from the ground and quickly ran toward Ah Gang's shuttle. If he wanted to escape, he had to use the shuttle. However, at this time, Qin Chuan was very weak. His legs were weak, and he couldn't run fast at all. In the blink of an eye, Li Man Man had caught up with him. "Damn woman, I'll fight you to the death." At this time, Qin Chuan suddenly roared. He suddenly turned around and flung his left hand, throwing an azure lightning at Li Man Man. Facing the incoming lightning, Li Man Man immediately revealed a terrified expression and dodged in a panic. Qin Chuan took advantage of this opportunity to immediately widen the distance between them and quickly ran to the side of Ah Gang's shuttle. At this time, the lightning that was thrown by Qin Chuan hit the ground with a bang, revealing its original appearance. It was the mid-grade Thunder Spirit Stone that Qin Chuan had been holding in his hand. The bright lightning was only a part of the thunder power contained in the mid-grade Thunder Spirit Stone that Qin Chuan had drawn out. It looked frightening, but it didn't have any lethality at all. Seeing the mid-grade Thunder Spirit Stone fall to the ground, Li Man Man almost went crazy. She stared hatefully at Qin Chuan, who had already jumped onto the shuttle, and said angrily, "Qin Chuan, I must kill you." However, Qin Chuan, who had already entered the shuttle and successfully closed the hatch, completely ignored Li Man Man, who had completely gone berserk. After starting the shuttle, he immediately flew away like lightning. Seeing this, Li Man Man didn't hesitate and immediately jumped into her own shuttle. She started the shuttle and chased after him. As for Ah Gang, who was lying on the ground, no one cared about his life at this time. Chapter 100. Xiang City. Aju was sitting in front of the window, silently looking at the night scene outside the window. Her face was calm and tranquil. Knock, knock, knock. A regular knock on the door disturbed Aju's enjoyment of the night scenery. She didn't turn her head and said lightly, "Come in." Creak. The alloy-forged door slowly opened, and an assistant in a black uniform slowly walked in and stood behind Aju. He said to Aju in a very respectful tone, "Miss Li Man Man made a move, but Qin Chuan escaped." Aju, who was originally expressionless, heard the assistant's report and couldn't help but gently raise her eyebrows. Her cheeks showed a little surprise. "He escaped?" "Yes." The assistant nodded and said, "According to the description of our observer, Qin Chuan first showed weakness to the enemy. After approaching Li Man Man and her subordinate, he suddenly attacked the subordinate and defeated him. Then he used a middle-grade Thunder Spirit Stone to scare Li Man Man away. He took the opportunity to snatch the subordinate's shuttle and escaped in the shuttle. Li Man Man flew into a rage out of humiliation and also took the shuttle to chase after him." Hearing the assistant's description, Aju couldn't help but imagine the scene of Qin Chuan and Li Man Man's battle of wits and courage. She couldn't help but applaud softly and exclaim, "I really didn't expect that this little guy could bring me such a big surprise." Aju knew that Li Man Man got the information and went to snipe Qin Chuan. She originally thought that Qin Chuan would be caught by Li Man Man and brought back to the Li family. At that time, she could go to the Li family to ask for him and sell a favor to Qin Chuan. But she didn't expect that Qin Chuan was so brave. With his own strength, he killed an enemy and successfully escaped from Li Man Man's hands. Although Li Man Man had already chased after Qin Chuan, but judging from Qin Chuan's previous performance, it should be difficult for Li Man Man to do anything to Qin Chuan. "Miss, our intelligence officer checked the situation of the subordinate after Qin Chuan and Li Man Man left. He is dead." The assistant paused for a moment before continuing. "That person's name is Ah Gang. He's at the 6th level of the Qi refining stage." Hearing this, Aju slightly pursed her lips and said, "You want to tell me that Qin Chuan, with the strength of the 1st level of the refinement stage, can kill a gang who is at the 6th level of the refinement stage? So he must have a unique skill or even a big secret, right?" The assistant didn't dare to say anything and lowered his head. "Everyone will encounter their own opportunities, just like the old man who found the starry sky relic back then. I advise you not to have any evil thoughts." Aju turned back and stared coldly at her assistant. "Now that Qin Chuan and our Yu family are friends, I don't want to become enemies one day. Remember to tell this to the person behind you when you go back." Hearing Aju's last sentence, the assistant's face suddenly became frightened and hurriedly said, "Miss, shut up." Aju coldly interrupted, "Get lost." After the panicked assistant left, Aju couldn't help but tiredly raise her hand and gently rub her temples. Recently, it was really an eventful period. In the shuttle, Qin Chuan set the shuttle to autopilot mode and then breathed a long sigh of relief. In the face of the stronger Li Man Man, Qin Chuan had no chance of winning at all. The only thing he could do was to escape. It was impossible to run by 2 legs, so he had to rely on the shuttle. Fortunately, a gang shuttle was just an ordinary model and did not require special fingerprint and iris verification. It could be started by inserting the key, and at that time, a gang did not remove the key, which created an opportunity for Qin Chuan to escape by taking the shuttle. Unfortunately, Li Man Man's shuttle was a limited edition, and its speed was faster. Although he started early, it wouldn't take long for Li Man Man to catch up with him. He simply couldn't get rid of Li Man Man, and when the shuttle's energy was exhausted, he would have to face Li Man Man's claws. Qin Chuan checked the energy slot, and the shuttle could still move at full speed for 2 hours. That was to say, he still had 2 hours to rest. However, there was one thing that made Qin Chuan's face very ugly, and that was it would take at least 3 hours for his body to recover to its normal level. When Qin Chuan first fully stimulated this mini version of the power of the domain, it only took him an hour to recover. But now that he was promoted to the Qi refining stage, the time needed to recover not only did not shorten, but also became longer, which was something that Qin Chuan never expected. However, on second thought, The power of the lightning power of the mini version of the domain also became stronger with the growth of his strength, so it would take a long time to recover, which was reasonable. This damn woman. Qin Chuan looked at Li Man-Man's shuttle through the shuttle's radar, and he really wanted to press Li Man-Man to the ground and beat her up. Your sister turned into a ghost by herself, so why are you trying to make things difficult for me? At the moment of crisis, Qin Chuan couldn't really wait until the shuttle's energy was exhausted, and he had to find a way to deal with Li Man-Man as soon as possible. After thinking about it, Qin Chuan finally focused on the small golden sword floating in his mind. Brother, give me your friend list. Qin Chuan kept using his mind to contact the small golden sword, but the small golden sword was still cold and didn't care about him at all. Dog, if I die, you won't have a good time either. Qin Chuan was angry. I'm in trouble now, and you don't want to save me. Then don't blame me for breaking up with you. As if it felt Qin Chuan's anger, the small golden sword that had been unresponsive to Qin Chuan's mind finally trembled slightly, which was a response to Qin Chuan. In the next moment, the small golden sword suddenly disappeared from Qin Chuan's mind. Perceiving the disappearance of the small golden sword, Qin Chuan was a little confused. Brother, I'm just saying that we'll break up. Don't tell me you really took it seriously and want to find the next one? Just as Qin Chuan had this thought in his mind, the small golden sword that disappeared suddenly appeared in his mind again, slowly circling his talent rune twice, and slowly returned to its original position. What's the meaning of this? Qin Chuan was a little confused. The small golden sword disappeared and suddenly reappeared. What was it going to do? Just as Qin Chuan was thinking about this problem, the shuttle that belonged to Li Man-Man that had been closely following him seemed to have lost control and actually slammed towards the ground. Boom! Qin Chuan was dumbfounded as he stared at the flying shuttle that crashed into the ground at high speed. He was completely stunned. What was going on? Involuntarily, Qin Chuan thought of the sudden disappearance and reappearance of the small golden sword. Could it be that the reason why Li Man-Man's shuttle suddenly crashed was related to the moment when the small golden sword disappeared? Chapter 101. Brother, were you the one who caused the shuttle to crash? Qin Chuan was a bit excited. If this golden dagger could kill people invisibly, then wouldn't it be very powerful? 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes passed, and the golden dagger quietly floated above the talent rune, completely ignoring Qin Chuan. This made Qin Chuan's face darken. He had just added him as a friend, and now it deleted him? Brother, you're living in my brain, so you're considered my tenant. There's no need to be so cold to your landlord, right? Qin Chuan once again tried to contact the golden dagger with his mind, but he still didn't get any response. Seeing that the golden dagger had no intention of responding to him, Qin Chuan rolled his eyes speechlessly. This dog was really cold. But although the golden dagger ignored Qin Chuan didn't plan on letting it go. He smiled at the golden dagger and said, Brother, why did you jump out of the stone? What are those stone pillars for? What's the name of that continent? Also, do you have a name? Qin Chuan asked a series of questions, but he didn't get any response. He was already used to the golden dagger's cold attitude, so he smiled and continued. How about I give you a name? Look, you're golden from head to toe, so how about Little Gold? If you don't like it, then Big Gold. Seeing that the golden dagger didn't have any objections to the name he gave it, Qin Chuan grinned and said, All right, then I'll call you Dog from now on. As Qin Chuan's voice fell, the golden dagger that had been motionless all this time suddenly moved down a bit, its sharp tip gently touching Qin Chuan's talent rune. At that moment, Qin Chuan suddenly felt an indescribable sense of crisis in his heart. Brother, I was just joking. Don't take it seriously, calm down. When the golden dagger heard Qin Chuan's apology, its body trembled slightly. Suddenly, countless golden runes appeared from the dagger and revolved around it. After a moment, these runes dissipated and the golden dagger returned to its original position and fell silent again. Seeing this scene, Qin Chuan seemed to have thought of something and said in a low voice, You showed me these runes, so you're telling me your name? Could it be that you're called Runic Sword? Buzz. As Qin Chuan said the name runic sword, the golden dagger suddenly let out an extremely low hum, as if crying and grieving. Sensing the golden dagger's human-like behavior, Qin Chuan pursed his lips and said, "Although I don't know where you're from now on, you've saved me, so we can be considered friends. From now on, I'll affectionately call you little one. Be affectionate. For now on, I..." This time, the runic sword didn't respond, as if it had tacitly agreed to the nickname Qin Chuan had given it. Runic sword, runic sea. Qin Chuan didn't disturb the runic sword any further, and instead softly muttered these two names. He knew that the runic sword and the runic sea definitely had some special connection. That shattered continent, perhaps it was called Runic Continent? Without any worries, Qin Chuan drove the flying shuttle all the way to the Black Moon mountain range. At this time, Xi'an City had already been turned upside down. The sole lamp that Li Man had left in the family had been extinguished. Li Man was the eldest daughter of the first wife of the Li family. She had a noble status and was very likely to become the future successor of the Li family. However, such an important person to the Li family had died without a sound. How could the Li family not be shocked? Just as the Li family was thoroughly investigating this matter, Zhu also received the news of Li Man's death. Although she had long known that Li Man couldn't do anything to Qin Chuan, she never thought that Qin Chuan could actually kill Li Man. One must know that Li Man was a master of the 12th level of the Qi refining stage. Even if 10 Qin Chuan swarmed up, they wouldn't necessarily be able to cause any harm to Li Man. But now Li Man was dead. Could it be someone else? Zhu only suspected for a moment, then shook her head and denied this idea. The Li family was not unknown in this area. With Li Man's status in the Li family, even if she provoked a foundation establishment stage cultivator, her life would not be in danger. At this time, the person who had the courage to directly kill Li Man must be Qin Chuan. Just when Zhu was wondering how Qin Chuan killed Li Man, another more shocking news came. Not only was Li Man dead, but even her soul had also disappeared. In other words, Li Man had completely disappeared from this world. This matter is a bit big. Zhu frowned slightly. Now that Li Man's body and soul had been destroyed, Qin Chuan and the Li family had established an endless blood feud. If the Yu family continued to intervene in this matter, it might provoke the anger of the Li family. At that time, it was really not worth it to go to war with the Li family for Qin Chuan. Forget it. Since he has the ability to destroy Li Man's soul, then he should be ready to become a mortal enemy of the Li family. I won't get involved. Zhu sighed faintly. The young people nowadays were really grumpy. Sister, you died so miserably. In the ancestral hall of the Li family, a palm-sized ghost floated in front of an extinguished soul lamp, making a mournful and gloomy cry, resentment soaring to the sky. Outside the ancestral hall, Li Jing looked gloomily at the crying ghost and said coldly, "What are you crying for? What else can you do besides crying? Your sister, in order to vent your anger, has now ended up with her body and soul destroyed. Do you only know how to cry? I want revenge. I want revenge. I want to kill Qin Chuan. I must kill him." The ghost roared with a voice full of resentment. "I, Li Manny, swear to heaven and earth that within 3 years I will kill Qin Chuan to avenge my sister. If I violate this oath, heaven and earth will not tolerate it." Boom! Above the sky, suddenly, lightning flashed, and there seemed to be a majestic existence looking indifferently at Li Manny. Seeing this scene, Li Jing said in a deep voice, "Manny has made a great oath and attracted the attention of heaven. If she cannot complete the oath within 3 years, she will not be tolerated by heaven and earth and will be forcibly erased by the power of the oath." "I'm not afraid of death." Li Manny slowly floated out of the ancestral hall and stopped in front of Li Jing. She said coldly, "Father, please send me to Yin Mountain." "You really want to go to Yin Mountain?" Li Jing looked at Li Manny seriously. "Once you enter Yin Mountain, you'll have no way out." Li Manny's eyes were full of resentment, and her expression was ferocious. she said in a gloomy voice. My only way out is to kill Qin Chuan. Chapter 102. Strange. Why do I feel like I'm being spied on? Inside the shuttle, Qin Chuan suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. He turned around in confusion, but aside from the soft and comfortable backrest of the seat, he saw nothing. The radar didn't pick up on any pursuers either. Beep, beep, beep. Suddenly, an urgent alarm sounded. Qin Chuan glanced at the control panel. It turned out that the shuttle's energy was about to run out. Seeing this, Qin Chuan immediately controlled the shuttle to fly the last bit of distance before slowly landing on the ground. He opened the cockpit and walked out. Looking at the shuttle on the ground, he couldn't help but sigh regretfully. What a pity. This shuttle is worth at least 10 or 20 million. Qin Chuan didn't plan on taking the shuttle with him. After all, it was something of the Li family. Who knew if there were any tracking devices on it? Keeping it by his side was the same as burying a hidden danger. It was better to just throw it away. Looking around, Qin Chuan found a wide and flat road ahead. He decided to wait by the side of the road and see if there was a ride that could give him a ride. Qin Chuan's luck was pretty good. He had just walked to the side of the road when a civilian shuttle slowly flew over. This type of shuttle was usually used to travel between cities. It wasn't fast, but it could carry a lot of passengers. The ticket was also very cheap. It was very suitable for Qin Chuan right now. When the public shuttle approached, Qin Chuan immediately took out his photon computer from his backpack and scanned the shuttle. After the public shuttle received Qin Chuan's message, it slowly came to a stop beside Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan lightly jumped onto the shuttle and paid 100 Star Dragon coins for the ride through the photon computer. After buying the ticket, Qin Chuan lifted his foot and walked towards the passenger cabin. There were close to 100 seats in the cabin, but there were very few passengers. Qin Chuan randomly found an empty seat and sat down. He then used his photon computer to check which stops the public shuttle would pass by on its way. Bars is the final stop, Qin Chuan muttered in a low voice. He took out the Black Moon emblem from his bag and asked, Lele, how do I get to the Black Moon Mountain range from Barstown? La la la, little Lele is here. Lele's small figure appeared on the Black Moon badge. She smiled at Qin Chuan and said, Student Qin Chuan, you can take public shuttle number 081 from Barstown to the Elven City. Then leave from the Elven City's East Gate. Go straight for 300 kilometers and you will reach the edge of the Black Moon Mountain range. While speaking, Lele presented a detailed map in front of Qin Chuan, clearly marking the public shuttle ride locations and the stations they would pass through along the way. From Barstown to the City of Elves, there were a total of 4 stops and 8 hours. As for how long it would take to walk from the City of Elves to the Black Moon Mountains, that would depend on how fast Qin Chuan walked. I got it. Thank you. Bye-bye. See you next time. After Lele disappeared, Qin Chuan put away the Black Moon emblem. He would arrive at Barstown in about 2 hours. It would be late at night by then, and he did not want to sleep on the public shuttle. He would probably find a nearby hotel to rest and set off early the next morning. In other words, if there were no accidents, he should arrive at the City of Elves tomorrow afternoon. As for when he would set off for the Black Moon Mountains, that would have to be considered. Just as Qin Chuan was about to close his eyes and rest, the star hanging on his optical computer suddenly rang. Qin Chuan opened the star and took a look. It was a message from Lu Zi. Qin Chuan, I'm going to work hard towards my dreams, so please give me your blessings. Seeing this brainless message, Qin Chuan was stunned for a moment, then casually replied, Good luck. After waiting for a moment and not waiting for Lu Zi's reply, Qin Chuan put away his optical computer. At this time, the public shuttle stopped again. It should have encountered people who were taking it midway, like Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan packed up his things and looked at the cabin door with slight curiosity. After a while, 3 figures slowly walked in. 2 men and 1 woman. Seeing these 3 people, Qin Chuan raised his eyebrows slightly. These 3 people were actually cultivators at the first level of the Qi refinement stage. Judging from their age, they should be about the same age as him. I'm really going to vomit. How did this shuttle break down for no reason? The tall and mighty boy looked at the slightly narrow seat in the cabin with disdain and said to his companion, Fortunately, there are few passengers. Otherwise, I would really be depressed to death. That's enough, Hu Dingshan. Shut your mouth. The other slightly thin boy said impatiently. Don't disturb me and little Jing's rest. Hearing the skinny boy's words, Hu Dingshan could not help but turn his gaze towards the exhausted but graceful Suanjing. A tinge of adoration involuntarily surfaced in his eyes as he softly said to Suanjing, Xiao Jing, I'm sorry. I disturbed you just now. Hu Dingshan, who had been boisterous before, now behaved very politely in front of Suanjing. Obviously, in front of a girl, no matter how boisterous a guy was, he would still maintain a certain demeanor. No. Suanjing gently shook her head, then looked at the seats around her and said, You guys sit here, I'll go to the other side. Saying this, Suanjing lifted her feet and slowly walked to the opposite side of Qinchuan and sat down. Although the two rows of seats were facing each other, the distance between them was very large. Therefore, Suanjing didn't care about Qinchuan's existence. Seeing this scene, Qinchuan didn't feel surprised. After all, the place he chose was the most peaceful and comfortable. It was normal for Suanjing to choose this place. However, while Qinchuan thought this way, the others didn't. That thin boy saw Qinchuan sitting opposite of Suanjing and couldn't help but frown. He lifted his feet and walked toward Qinchuan. He reached out and patted Qinchuan's shoulder, saying, Brother, give up your seat. Qinchuan raised his eyes and glanced at the skinny boy. He calmly replied, There are many empty seats. Why do you want me to give up my seat? Feinan, what are you doing? Hu Dingshan also walked over at this time. He casually sat next to Qinchuan and said to Qinchuan, Brother, I'll pay for your ticket. How about you give up your seat? While speaking, Hu Dingshan took out 1,000 yuan Star Dragon coin from his wallet and handed it to Qinchuan, hinting Qinchuan to accept it. Qinchuan thoughtfully looked at Hu Dingshan, then looked at the unsightly Feinan and Suanjing who had her eyes closed. He then smiled and said, If you had done this earlier, there wouldn't have been so much trouble. Brother, you know the rules. I'll give my seat to you. After saying this, Qinchuan took the money and stood up. He took his backpack and walked toward the other empty seats. It was only a seat, there was no need to fight over it. Moreover, it was 1,000 yuan. It would be a waste to not earn it. Chapter 103. Seeing Qinchuan take the money and give up his seat, Hu Dingshan couldn't help but proudly look at Feinan on the side. Because of the quarrel, he lost face in front of Suanjing, and now he also made Feinan lose face, so they were even. Hu Dingshan sat down in Qinchuan's original seat and smiled at Suanjing sitting across from him. Little Jing, I recently had some doubts about the Tranquility Array glyph. Can I ask you for some advice? Feinan, who was sitting not far away, heard Hu Dingshan's words and couldn't help but say, Hu Dingshan, I've told you many times, little Jing is very tired and needs to rest. Don't disturb her. Also, wait until we reach the school. There will naturally be a teacher to guide you. Hearing Feinan's words, Hu Dingshan unhappily glared at him, then turned to Suanjing and smiled. Little Jing, you rest well. I won't disturb you. Soon, the cabin became quiet. Qinchuan silently looked at the performance of these three people and couldn't help but laugh. This kind of drama of two men chasing a woman was really interesting. Time passed unknowingly. When the shuttle arrived at Basstown, Qinchuan stood up and prepared to get off. At this time, Suanjing also stood up and said to the still sleeping Hu Dingshan and Feinan, We've arrived at Basstown. We should get off. Qinchuan looked at Suanjing with some surprise. He didn't expect that they would also get off at Basstown. After Hu Dingshan was woken up by Suanjing, he mischievously smiled and said to Suanjing, sitting across from you, Little Jing, I unknowingly fell asleep, sleeping so soundly. Hearing Hu Dingshan's words, Feinan couldn't help but coldly snort, then looked at Qinchuan with dissatisfaction. If not for this guy not giving face, the one sitting across from Suanjing would have been him. As for Feinan's gaze, Qinchuan directly ignored it. Wanting to pick up a girl but not being willing to pay served him right. When the shuttle stopped, Qinchuan was the first to get off. It was already late at night, and he was too lazy to look around for a hotel. He went straight to the hotel closest to the platform. Walking into the hotel, Qin Chuan showed his ID and said to the AI at the front desk, "Get me a room." "Sir, we only have one suite left in our hotel. Do you need it?" The price of the suite is 800 star dragon coins per night. Hearing the robot's words, Qin Chuan frowned slightly. $800? Fortunately, Hu Dingshan had given him $1,000 for the seat. Otherwise, he would not be willing to stay in such an expensive suite. A suite, then? Qin Chuan handed the 1,000 star dragon coins that he had obtained not long ago to the robot. He quickly obtained the suite's room card and turned to walk towards the elevator. After arriving at the suite, Qin Chuan casually threw his backpack on the sofa and was about to take a bath to relax, but he didn't expect the doorbell to ring at this time. Hearing the doorbell, Qin Chuan couldn't help showing a strange expression. Could it be that this hotel had some special service? With a heart of refusal, Qin Chuan opened the door. What surprised him was that the people standing at the door were actually Su Enjing's group of 3 that he had met on the public shuttle before. Clearly, Su Enjing's group of 3 was also very surprised to see Qin Chuan here. But soon, Hu Dingshan said to Qin Chuan as if they were close friends, "Brother, this is fate." "What? Is something the matter?" Qin Chuan didn't mean to let the 3 of them in. He just stood straight at the door. Seeing Qin Chuan's vigilant performance, Hu Dingshan didn't care. He smiled and explained, "It's like this, brother. We just went to the nearby hotels and saw that there were no rooms. Just now, the robot downstairs told us that a customer had just stayed in the last suite of the hotel alone. We thought about trying our luck to see if we could stay together for a night. What a coincidence. We just happened to meet you." "I understand." Qin Chuan nodded, but he still didn't mean to move aside. I understand. Hu Dingshan also understood when he saw this. He immediately took out 2 1,000 yuan bills from his wallet and handed it to Qin Chuan. "We will pay for the room, and the other part is an apology for disturbing you." Seeing Hu Dingshan being so tactful, Qin Chuan immediately smiled and accepted the money. He then moved aside and said, "This suite has a total of 3 bedrooms. The 3 of you can stay here. I can sleep on the sofa." After accepting the other party's money, there was no reason to let them sleep on the sofa. Moreover, the sofa in this suite was very spacious. It wouldn't be a problem to sleep on it for a night. Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Hu Dingshan couldn't help but give Qin Chuan a thumbs up and said, "Brother, you're really generous." On the other side, Fei Nan coldly snorted and said very disdainfully, "Money grubber, really a poor ghost." Su Enjing, who was standing behind, heard Fei Nan's words. She couldn't help but frown, seemingly somewhat unhappy. "Wait a minute." Qin Chuan reached out and stopped Fei Nan, who was about to enter the room, and said indifferently, "This brother just gave us 2,000 yuan. 1,000 yuan is his, and the other 1,000 yuan is this girl's. You haven't paid yet." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Fei Nan immediately became angry. "A suite only costs 800 yuan. That's all. You're extorting me." "Whatever you say." Qin Chuan shrugged indifferently and said, "But for this brother's sake, it's not impossible to reluctantly let you stay here. But in this case, you'll have to sleep on the sofa. It's impossible for you to sleep in the guest room. Also, there's one thing you're right about. I'm really money grubber. To tell you the truth, I'm a poor boy from the slums. I don't have any other hobbies in this life, but I like money." Qin Chuan wouldn't indulge Fei Nan's bad habits. Either lose face or give him money. It's your choice. Hearing this, Fei Nan's face immediately turned red. He was extremely ashamed and resentful. At this time, Su Enjing stepped forward and handed Qin Chuan a large bill. She said apologetically, "This is the room fee I'm paying on his behalf. Also, what he said just now was unintentional. I apologize on his behalf." Qin Chuan smiled and received the money. He said indifferently, "I'll take the money. There's no need to apologize, because what he said was right. I'm money grubber." After saying this, Qin Chuan didn't care about what the 3 of them thought. He directly took his clothes and walked towards the bathroom. Looking at Qin Chuan's back as he walked towards the bathroom, Hu Dingshan clicked his tongue and said, "This person looks very confident and unrestrained. He's not ordinary, not burdened by reputation, not caring about other people's eyes and opinions. He's indeed confident." Su Jing also felt that Qin Xuan was somewhat different and very interesting. Humph. Because of Qin Xuan, Fei Nan lost face twice today and was in a bad mood. Hearing Hu Dingshan and Su Jing praising Qin Xuan, his mood became even worse. He took his luggage and walked toward the guest room, slamming the door shut. Chapter 104. After Qin Xuan finished washing up and walked out of the bathroom, Su Jing and the other two were no longer in the living room. Looking at the closed doors of the 3 bedrooms, Qin Xuan had no intention of disturbing them. He walked to the sofa and sat down, preparing to cultivate instead of sleeping. Just as Qin Xuan sat cross-legged and was about to practice the thunder-devouring scripture, he suddenly thought that perhaps he could try to cultivate with the help of the weakened version of the spiritual reception talisman array to see the actual effect. This weakened version of the spiritual reception talisman array was maintained and controlled by his mental strength. If the other 3 people in the room wanted to spy on him, with his perception, he would definitely be able to detect them immediately. Then, he would calmly dissipate the talisman array without being afraid of exposing anything. Qin Xuan had always been a man of action. After making a decision, he immediately began to inscribe the weakened version of the spiritual reception talisman array with his mental strength. After the previous experience, Qin Xuan's inscribing speed was much faster this time. In about 5 minutes, the weakened version of the spiritual reception talisman array was successfully inscribed. Looking at the weakened version of the spiritual reception talisman array that was emitting a hazy light, Qin Xuan felt the effect and smiled with satisfaction. Then, he closed his eyes and began to cultivate the thunder-devouring scripture. Just as Qin Xuan began to cultivate, Su Jing, who was sleeping in the master bedroom, suddenly sat up from the bed. She looked at the surrounding environment with some doubts and murmured in a low voice, "Strange. Why did the surrounding spiritual fluctuations become so active? Did I sense it wrongly?" Su Jing closed her eyes slightly and seriously felt the fluctuation of spiritual energy in the bedroom. It was indeed more active than before, and it was also more intense. Moreover, she also found that the closer the spiritual energy was to the living room, the more active and rich it was. Involuntarily, Su Jing thought of Qin Xuan. Could it be that the spiritual energy has become active because of him? Su Jing was a little surprised and curious at the same time. She wanted to know what method Qin Xuan used to cause the spiritual fluctuations nearby to become so active. But if he went out rashly, wouldn't he be suspected of invading other people's privacy? Since he's making such a big commotion in the living room, maybe he's not afraid of attracting attention? Su Jing pondered for a moment, and in the end, she couldn't resist the curiosity in her heart. She was about to get up and go to the living room to check on the situation. Just as she walked to the bedroom door and was about to open it, the originally extremely active spiritual energy in the room suddenly began to gradually stabilize, and the rich spiritual energy that was concentrated in the living room gradually began to dissipate. Sensing the change in spiritual energy, Su Jing couldn't help but stare blankly. What happened? Su Jing stood in front of the door for a while. After noticing that the spiritual energy was gradually returning to normal, she temporarily put aside her curiosity and prepared to return to bed to continue resting. However, what Su Jing didn't expect was that after she laid down on the bed, the surrounding spiritual energy fluctuations actually became active again, and the center point was still the living room. Su Jing was a little surprised. She sat up again and got out of bed to go to the living room to check on the situation. However, something strange happened. When she walked to the door and was about to open it, the fluctuation of spirit energy stabilized again. At the same time, someone knocked on her bedroom door from the outside. "Hey, are you asleep?" Qin Xuan, who was standing outside the door, was a little speechless. Was this woman sick? Why was she so curious? Couldn't she just lie in bed and sleep? Hearing Qin Xuan's voice, Su Jing thought for a moment and opened the door. She glanced at Qin Chuan standing at the door and asked, "What's the matter?" Qin Chuan rolled his eyes speechlessly and said, "Nothing. I just want to tell you to lie quietly in bed and sleep. Don't walk around if there's nothing." Su Jing looked at Qin Chuan with some curiosity and asked, "Was that spiritual energy fluctuation really caused by you?" Obviously, Su Jing understood the meaning of Qin Chuan's words. He was reminding her not to be too curious about other people's privacy. However, she still couldn't hold back and asked the question in her heart. "Woman, I'm very dangerous," Qin Chuan deliberately said to Su Jing in a gloomy voice. "If you know my secret, then you can forget about getting rid of me for the rest of your life." Su Jing looked at Qin Chuan with a slightly subtle expression and asked, "But now that I know your secret, how are you going to pester me? Are you going to pursue me?" Qin Chuan was stunned. Why didn't any of the girls he met recently have a normal mind? If I don't explore your secret and just cultivate in the bedroom, is that okay?" Although Su Jing was very curious about Qin Chuan's secret in her heart, the two of them met by chance. There was no reason for him to expose his secret to her. However, under the condition of not invading other people's privacy, it shouldn't be too much to borrow some spirit energy to cultivate, right? Up to you. Qin Chuan shrugged gently. As long as she didn't come out, he had no opinion. "Thank you." Su Jing sincerely thanked Qin Chuan, but there was still some regret in her heart. If she could cultivate in such active spirit energy every day, her cultivation progress would definitely be rapid. After making the agreement, Su Jing didn't leave the bedroom as expected. She quietly cultivated on the bed in the room. After carefully feeling it, Su Jing found that the spirit energy in the room had increased by at least 20%. If it was in the living room, the level of activity would be even higher. I just don't know how long the situation can last. With such curiosity, Su Jing quietly cultivated until 7 o'clock in the morning the next day. She slowly opened her eyes and ended her cultivation for the whole night. Just now, she noticed that the spiritual energy in the room had returned to its normal level. It actually lasted for the whole night. Su Jing turned her eyes to look out of the window. Her bright eyes couldn't help but show a touch of shock. She didn't expect that Qin Chuan could actually make the spirit energy in the vicinity stay in a high active state for the whole night. If it wasn't because the sky was already bright, perhaps it could have lasted for a longer time. Feeling the comfortable feeling after cultivating for the whole night, Su Jing couldn't help but be curious again. How did Qin Chuan do it? "Hey, the room will only be checked out at noon. I'll leave first." In the living room, Qin Chuan's voice suddenly came. Hearing this, Su Jing immediately got out of bed, opened the door, and walked out of the bedroom. She said to Qin Chuan, who was packing his backpack, "Wait a minute." Qin Chuan looked at Su Jing curiously and asked, "What's wrong?" "That." Su Jing hesitated and finally said, "Thank you." When Qin Chuan heard this, he grinned and said, "It's nothing. Bye." Chapter 105. As the saying goes, fate brings you together. Qin Chuan really didn't expect that he would see Su Jing and the other two on public shuttle 081 again. Clearly, Su Jing and the other two hadn't thought that they would meet Qin Chuan again. "We are really fated." Hu Dingshan saw Qin Chuan's figure and laughed. He walked over to Qin Chuan's side and sat down, but before he could do anything, someone had already sat down beside Qin Chuan. Seeing Su Jing take the initiative to sit beside Qin Chuan, both Hu Dingshan and Fei Nan were stunned. They had been classmates with Su Jing in the same high school, so they understood her very well. Su Jing had always hated being close to strangers, and this was the first time they had seen her take the initiative to approach a male stranger. For a moment, they looked at Qin Chuan with strange expressions. What a coincidence! Su Jing looked at Qin Chuan with a subtle expression and said, "In less than a day, we've already met 3 times. Are you also going to the Elven City?" Su Jing had only wanted to say hello to Qin Chuan, but when she saw the stunned expression on Qin Chuan's face, she couldn't help but ask in surprise, "Are you also going to the Black Moon Combat Academy to participate in the exam?" Sure enough, We are fated. Qin Xuan looked deeply at Su and Jing and said, I didn't think that we would be classmates. Hearing Qin Xuan admit that he was also going to the Black Moon Combat Academy, Hu Dingshan and Fei Nan also sat down. However, they sat across from Su and Jing and kept a certain distance from her. Looking at Qin Xuan and Su and Jing sitting so close to each other, they felt uncomfortable and uncomfortable. Brother, let me introduce myself. I am Hu Dingshan, he is Fei Nan, and this beauty is Su and Jing. We are all from the Fantasy Star City and are third-year high school students of the Fantasy Star City's Noble Academy. What about you? Hu Dingshan was still very friendly as he greeted Qin Xuan warmly. My name is Qin Xuan. I'm from the state capital of Qing. Qin Xuan introduced himself politely, but he realized that after he finished speaking, Su and Jing and the other two looked at him strangely. Brother, you are from the state capital of Qing, and your name is Qin Xuan. Could you be the famous Qin Xuan? Hu Dingshan stared at Qin Xuan in bewilderment. Qin Xuan rubbed his nose and said, If I'm not wrong, I'm probably the Qin Xuan you're talking about. Qin Xuan really did not expect that his reputation would be so great. He had only said his name and hometown, and he was recognized. Damn, I actually met a famous person. Hu Dingshan was somewhat excited. When he had first heard about the Hidden Dragon Arena's battle, he had always wanted to get to know Qin Xuan. He had never thought that fate would bring them together on the way to the Black Moon Combat Academy. I'm not a famous person. I'm just an ordinary person. Qin Xuan did not feel that he was a famous person. He was just an ordinary person. Brother, you're too modest. But I didn't expect that you would go to the Black Moon Combat Academy. We all thought that you would go to the Cosmic Star Academy. Hu Dingshan chuckled and said to Qin Xuan, Who in the world doesn't know that Starry Sky Academy's Queen of Blades, who stepped into the Foundation establishment stage before the age of 20, is your senior? Queen of Blades? Qin Xuan was stunned when he heard this name. He then asked with uncertainty, The Queen of Blades you're talking about, is it Senior Zhou Lin? Who else could it be other than Zhou Lin? Hu Dingshan shouted, Don't tell me you don't know. Just a few days ago, the Queen of Blades, who is your senior, defeated the three geniuses of the First Academy of Star Dragon Academy with her early Foundation establishment stage strength. She became famous for a while and earned herself the title of Queen of Blades. Everyone thought that you would enter the Cosmic Star Academy to become her junior and a good partner in the future. Who would have thought that you would choose the Black Moon Combat Academy? Qin Xuan was surprised when he heard Hu Dingshan's words. He really did not know about this matter, and Zhou Lin had never mentioned it to him. It seems that your senior did not tell you about this matter. Maybe she was afraid that you would worry about her. Su and Jing, who was sitting beside him, looked at Qin Xuan with a subtle expression and said, After all, the situation at that time was very dangerous. Maybe. Although Qin Xuan wanted to contact Zhou Lin and ask her about the situation, it was not appropriate to do so in front of so many people. Thus, he could only give up for the time being and wait for an opportunity to ask Zhou Lin in the future. Qin Xuan, rumor has it that you could lay down a talisman array on your own before you reach the Qi refining stage. Now that you've reached the Qi refining stage, you should have become a true talisman array master long ago. How many level 1 talisman arrays have you mastered? Fei Nan, who had not spoken until now, could not help but ask Qin Xuan a question. Seeing Su and Jing sitting beside Qin Xuan, he was quite unhappy and planned to attack Qin Xuan in the area of talisman arrays. Qin Xuan glanced at Fei Nan and indifferently said, None of your business. You. Fei Nan was furious. I only asked you a question. What kind of attitude is this? That's my attitude. Fei Nan looked at Qin Xuan in a bad mood, and Qin Xuan did not want to waste his breath on Fei Nan. So he simply turned his head away, disinclined to pay attention to Fei Nan. Seeing Qin Xuan being so arrogant, Fei Nan hurriedly said to Su and Jing, Little Jing, you also saw it. This guy doesn't put us in his eyes just because he has a bit of fame. He's simply going too far. How can we associate ourselves with such a person? Su and Jing slightly frowned. It was not because of Qin Xuan's attitude towards Fei Nan, but because Fei Nan's words clearly wanted to draw a clear line between him and Qin Xuan, even including her and Hu Dingshan. Fei Nan, what do you mean? Just now, I was chatting with Brother Qin Chuan. Are you blind? Hu Dingshan somewhat discontentedly said to Fei Nan. Also, if you don't want to sit here, then go somewhere else. There are many empty seats on the bus. You can choose. Fei Nan was extremely angry. He could not help but look at Su Yinjing, hoping that she would stand on his side. Su Yinjing slightly pursed her lips and sighed. Fei Nan, ever since you made Qin Chuan give up his seat yesterday, you've been targeting Qin Chuan. In the future, we'll all be classmates studying in the Black Moon Combat Academy, so it's better for us to get along. If you want to enter the Black Moon Combat Academy, you have to master at least 10 kinds of level 1 array glyphs. I don't believe that with his background, he can learn 10 kinds of level 1 array glyphs early on. Fei Nan coldly snorted. Qin Chuan's unwillingness to answer the question about array glyphs was clearly due to his lack of confidence. Entering the Black Moon Combat Academy requires one to master 10 kinds of level 1 array glyphs. Qin Chuan couldn't help but look at Fei Nan in surprise. He really did not know about this requirement. Chapter 106. Hearing Qin Chuan's question, Fei Nan couldn't help but laugh heartily. He pointed at Qin Chuan and loudly said, "Little Jing, did you see that? I told you that he definitely hasn't grasped 10 rank 1 array glyphs. He actually wants to participate in the Black Moon Combat Academy's entrance exam without even knowing the rules. This is simply too funny." Fei Nan was laughing so hard that tears and snot were about to flow out. If this matter were spread, then Qin Chuan would immediately go from being a dazzling array genius to an idiot that everyone ridiculed. Fei Nan couldn't wait to hear those ridiculing Qin Chuan. Seeing that Qin Chuan's face didn't seem to be fake, Su Yinjing couldn't help but helplessly ask Qin Chuan, "Don't tell me that you didn't understand anything and rashly came here to participate in the Black Moon Combat Academy's entrance exam." Qin Chuan's face was somewhat gloomy. He had thought that the Black Moon Combat Academy was already a trap, but he hadn't expected that there would be an even bigger trap waiting for him. From what I know, as long as you pass through the Black Moon Mountain Range and reach the Azure Ancient City, you'll be considered to have completed the exam. There's no requirement to grasp 10 rank 1 array glyphs. Qin Chuan truthfully replied. His mind was currently in a mess. If the Black Moon Combat Academy's entrance exam really had such a rigid requirement, then he might not be able to pass this exam and could only be an auditing student. Actually, you don't have to be too discouraged. After all, there's still a long time before the end of the exam. With your talent in array glyphs, you'll definitely be able to grasp 10 rank 1 array glyphs. Su Yinjing's gentle voice comforted Qin Chuan. The Black Moon Combat Academy's entrance exam had just begun, so Qin Chuan might still have a chance. "Little Jing, stop messing around." Fei Nan saw that not only did Su Yinjing not ridicule Qin Chuan for overestimating himself, but she even mocked Qin Chuan in Wei. He immediately became unhappy and shouted, "Let's not talk about when he will be able to learn 10 level 1 talisman arrays. Just the source of the talisman arrays is a big problem for him." Fei Nan disdainfully looked at Qin Chuan, saying, "Even the most basic and cheapest flowing water talisman array inscription method would cost at least 10 million. Do you have that kind of money?" Fei Nan didn't believe that Qin Chuan, who was greedy for a few thousand star dragon coins, would have the money to buy 10 first-rank arrays. If it weren't for the support of their families, it would be impossible for them to gather 10 first-class talisman arrays, let alone Qin Chuan, who had no background and no money. Su Yinjing looked at Fei Nan with some displeasure and said, "Fei Nan, I didn't know you were so noisy before." Su Yinjing really couldn't understand Fei Nan. He used to be a modest gentleman with a great demeanor. How come after meeting Qin Chuan yesterday, he became so petty? "Little Jing, you misunderstood me. I just hope you won't be fooled." Fei Nan put on an earnest and well-intentioned appearance and said to Su Yinjing, "I'm worried that he doesn't have the money to buy the talisman array inscription method, so he has ideas about you. You are kind-hearted and pure. What if you're deceived by him?" Just as Fei Nan's voice fell, Hu Dingshan, who had been silent all this time, suddenly opened his mouth. Qin Chuan, in fact, you can look for your senior sister and give it a try. With her status in the Starry Sky Academy, it shouldn't be difficult for her to help you get the method to inscribe 10 level 1 symbol arrays. Are you kidding? No matter how powerful the Queen of Blades is, she is still only a student. 10 first-rank arrays, even the cheapest, will be worth more than 100 million. Do you think the Queen of Blades has that much face? Fei Nan smiled disdainfully, then looked at Qin Chuan with ridicule and said, Moreover, Qin Chuan didn't apply for the Starry Sky Academy, and instead went to participate in the Black Moon Combat Academy's entrance exam without any preparation. It might be related to the Queen of Blades. In Fei Nan's eyes, the relationship between Qin Chuan and Zhou Lin was definitely not as close as the rumors said. Otherwise, how could Qin Chuan not know about the origin of the Queen of Blades title? And how could he give up on the Starry Sky Academy to participate in the Black Moon Combat Academy's entrance exam? However, how could Fei Nan know that when Zhou Lin obtained the title of Queen of Blades, Qin Chuan was training in the Cloud Dragon Mountain Range? Zhou Lin had no way of contacting Qin Chuan, so naturally, she had no way of telling Qin Chuan about this matter. And by the time Qin Chuan left the mountain, the matter of the Queen of Blades had already been over for more than a month. With Zhou Lin's personality, she naturally didn't feel like bringing it up again. Qin Chuan, I think Fei Nan's suggestion is good. I can teach you the 10 first-rank arrays inscription methods that I know. Just treat it as a loan from me. If there's a chance in the future, you can repay me. Su Wenjing suddenly opened her mouth, successfully attracting everyone's attention. Fei Nan didn't think that after his reminder, Su Wenjing would actually take the initiative to teach Qin Chuan the method of inscribing arrays. Little Jing, you're crazy, Fei Nan exclaimed, unable to accept this. You're doing this, Fei Nan? Su Wenjing suddenly interrupted Fei Nan with a cold voice. Please remember, we're only classmates. You don't have the qualifications to meddle in my affairs. Today, Fei Nan had repeatedly ridiculed and made things difficult for Qin Chuan, which had already made Su Wenjing very unhappy. Now, seeing that Fei Nan wanted to stop her from helping Qin Chuan, Su Wenjing finally couldn't bear it anymore, and all the resentment that had accumulated in her heart towards Fei Nan completely exploded. Originally, Su Wenjing thought that since she, Fei Nan, and Hu Dingshan all came from Fantasy Star City, they could help and support each other after entering the Black Moon Combat Academy. But now, seeing Fei Nan's behavior, she felt that Fei Nan wasn't worthy of being her friend. Hu Dingshan was also somewhat unhappy with Fei Nan. He felt that Fei Nan was really too narrow-minded. If he helped Qin Chuan now, it would be a good karma. In the future, they might need to ask for Qin Chuan's help. Qin Chuan was very moved by Su Wenjing's good intentions, but he was a person with principles. He wasn't willing to owe someone a favor. Thank you for your good intentions, but I don't think it's necessary. At worst, I'll just enter the academy as an auditing student. Qin Chuan faintly smiled and said to Su Wenjing, Later, I'll find an opportunity to take the exam and become a full member. Previously, Qin Chuan felt that it was necessary for him to fight for the qualifications to become a full member. Now that he knew that he didn't even meet the most basic requirements, there was no need for him to fight. He would just obediently be an auditing student. However, what Qin Chuan didn't expect was that as soon as he finished speaking, Su Wenjing and Hu Dingshan looked at him strangely, making him feel somewhat scared. Was there a problem with what he said? And Fei Nan, who had just calmed down, once again started to clamor. I'm dying of laughter. Entering the academy as an auditing student? Do you really think that you're a super genius and have the qualifications to become a full member of the Black Moon Academy? Don't joke around. Chapter 107. Hearing Fei Nan's mockery, Qin Chuan was somewhat flabbergasted. He asked Su Wenjing, What? Don't tell me you don't have a Black Moon badge? Su Wenjing forced a smile and said to Qin Chuan, are you trying to tell me that you have a Black Moon badge? Don't be ridiculous. Fei Nan said with disdain, How could someone like him have a Black Moon badge? If he really has one, then I'll... Fei Nan's words stopped abruptly, as if he had been choked. His eyes widened as he looked at the black moon badge in Qinchuan's hand, as if he had seen a ghost. La la la, student Qinchuan, little Lele is here. What's your problem this time? Lele's small figure appeared above the black moon badge, looking at Qinchuan with a charmingly naive look. His appearance was extremely cute. Seeing Lele's figure appear above the black moon badge, Su and Jing and Hu Dingshan could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. This black moon badge was real. Qinchuan pursed his lips and asked Lele, to become an official student of the Black Moon Combat Academy, do I need to master 10 rank 1 array glyphs? That's not the case. Lele shook his head and explained to Qinchuan. According to the school's enrollment rules, if a high school student without a Black Moon badge wants to enter the Black Moon Combat Academy, they need to be at least at the first level of Qi Refining Realm. At the same time, they need to be proficient in 10 rank 1 array glyphs. Only then will they have the qualifications to participate in the school's assessment. Student Qinchuan, you have a Black Moon badge, so you have the qualifications to become an auditing student. You don't need to master 10 rank 1 array glyphs, nor do you need to participate in the general assessment. Hearing Lele's explanation, Qinchuan finally understood what was going on. The Black Moon Combat Academy recruited 2 types of students. The first type was like Su and Jing's group. They needed to be at the Qi Refining Realm and also master 10 rank 1 array glyphs. Only then would they have the qualifications to participate in the Black Moon Combat Academy's assessment. After passing, they could become auditing students. The second type of student was someone like Qinchuan. They had obtained the recognition of their mentors and obtained the Black Moon emblem. As long as they advanced to the Qi Condensation Realm and activated the Black Moon emblem, they would automatically obtain the qualifications to become an auditing student of the Black Moon Combat Academy. They were participating in another test, and this test was to obtain the opportunity to become an official student of the Black Moon Combat Academy. Previously, Qinchuan and Su and Jing had been talking about different things. They were not talking about the same thing at all. From the looks of it, that demon wasn't completely tricking me back then. Qinchuan thought to himself as his expression relaxed. He put away the Black Moon badge and smiled at Su and Jing, saying, "It seems like I don't need your help, but I still have to thank you." Qinchuan could tell that Su and Jing wasn't being polite. She really wanted to help him, so his words of thanks were sincere. Hearing Qinchuan's thanks, Su and Jing looked at Qinchuan with a complicated expression and said, "If we knew that you had a Black Moon badge, we wouldn't have said such nonsense. I also didn't know that the Black Moon badge had such a function." Qinchuan bitterly smiled and said, "I thought that every student who came to participate in the assessment had a Black Moon badge." At that time, Ningya had very casually given the Black Moon badge to Qinchuan, and Qinchuan hadn't realized how precious the Black Moon badge was. Later on, Lele hadn't given a detailed explanation, which led to today's misunderstanding. Hu Dingshan gave Qinchuan a thumbs up and said, "Brother, old Hu, have never admired anyone in my life. You are the first person who has made me admire you wholeheartedly. You are really too fierce." Every person who obtained a Black Moon badge could be considered a super genius. Qinchuan's position in the Black Moon Combat Academy would certainly not be low in the future. If they could establish a good relationship with Qinchuan now, it would be very beneficial for them in the future. That's right, I just heard someone say that if Qinchuan really had a Black Moon badge, what would he do? Hu Dingshan thoughtfully looked at the ashen-faced Fei Nan who was silently sitting on the side. He sneered and said, "Why aren't you talking now? Weren't you very noisy just now? Don't be too complacent." Fei Nan didn't have the face to continue staying here. He picked up his luggage and walked to another empty seat. Obviously, he didn't want to face Qinchuan for even a second. Seeing Fei Nan leave, Hu Dingshan disdainfully said to Qinchuan, "When we set off, Uncle Su wanted me and little Jing to go together, but he insisted on following us because we were classmates and from the same hometown. Now that he's gone, we can have some peace and quiet." Su and Jing slightly frowned and said to Hu Dingshan, "Dingshan, we are all classmates. There's no need to be like this." I know. Hu Dingshan mischievously smiled and said, "I'm not adding insult to injury. I just can't stand his face. Little Jing, you are gentle, kind, and considerate. Qin Chuan faintly smiled and said to Su and Jing and Hu Dingshan, we can be considered to be brought together by fate. If everyone can enter the Black Moon Combat Academy and become classmates, we can often meet each other in the future. You will definitely be able to enter. Little Jing, and I still have to work hard. Hu Dingshan somewhat enviously looked at Qin Chuan and said, sometimes I really envy super geniuses like you. Your talent is simply frightening. But to be honest, you are the most humble super genius I've ever seen. Getting along with you must be a very relaxing thing. Without the annoying Fei Nan, Qin Chuan, Hu Dingshan, and Su and Jing happily chatted. Time unknowingly passed, and they were less than half an hour away from their destination, the Elven City. Brother, when we reach the Elven City, we will go to the Black Moon Combat Academy's registration office to report. What about you? Hu Dingshan looked at Qin Chuan expectantly. Along the way, he had tried to ask Qin Chuan about some of his problems with arrays. He hadn't expected that Qin Chuan would actually help him solve many of his problems, making his understanding of arrays more profound. This also greatly increased his confidence in passing this exam. Thus, even though they were about to reach the Elven City, he was somewhat reluctant to part with Qin Chuan. After all, he still had many questions he wanted to ask Qin Chuan. I will also go to the registration office. Qin Chuan thought for a bit and decided to go to the registration office first. After all, he had originally planned to temporarily stay in the Elven City to collect information about the Black Moon Mountain Range. Going to the registration office was something he ought to do. That's really great. Hu Dingshan was ecstatic when he heard this, and then he immediately asked Qin Chuan, brother, when I was carving this tranquil heart array, I kept feeling that it was a bit obscure when I connected the third and fourth runes. What's going on? Su and Jing sat to the side and looked at Qin Chuan, patiently trying to answer Hu Dingshan's questions. She couldn't help but gently smile. Qin Chuan was probably the most humble super genius they had ever seen. Chapter 108. When the public shuttle arrived at the Elven City, Feinan didn't say goodbye to Su and Jing and Hu Dingshan and directly left with his luggage. Su and Jing was somewhat helpless about this, but Hu Dingshan didn't take it to heart. He can't recognize his mistake, so we don't need to accommodate him. Hu Dingshan comforted Su and Jing. We didn't have a good relationship with him in school, so we don't need to pay attention to this kind of person in the future. Su and Jing originally thought that after Feinan calmed down, he would realize his mistake and take the initiative to apologize to Qin Chuan. But from Feinan's current behavior, he still felt that he was in the right. Since that was the case, as Hu Dingshan said, they really didn't need to accommodate Feinan. After this small episode, no one mentioned Feinan again and began to appreciate the beautiful scenery of the Elven City. The reason why the Elven City was called the Elven City was because in ancient times, the Elven race had once occupied this place. After more than 10,000 years, the Elven race was involved in a huge calamity during the Great Chaos. Their clansmen were almost wiped out, and the Elven City was also massacred. Since then, the Elven race disappeared without a trace. Although the Elven City was preserved and rebuilt, no one had ever seen a real elf again. The Elven City was a half-natural, half-technological city. Here, you could see high-rise buildings full of modern technology. Similarly, you could also see towering ancient trees, reading ancient books, singing songs, and even dancing happily. In other cities, it might be difficult to see lively small animals, but in the Elven City, whether it was on the trees or on the roads, the silhouettes of small animals could be seen everywhere. They weren't afraid of humans, and humans also wouldn't harm these cute small animals because the Elven City had strict laws. Anyone who took the initiative to harm these small animals would be expelled from the Elven City forever, never to be allowed to take a step in the Elven City. It was also because of such strict laws that the Elven City was able to maintain its natural and harmonious style until now. Truly worthy of being called the Elven City. Su and Jing looked at the small squirrel standing on the side of the road. and her eyes couldn't help but reveal a touch of fondness. Girls always had no resistance to such cute creatures. Qingchuan was also very emotional. This was the first time he had seen such a perfect combination of nature and technology. Perhaps in the entire Federation, only the City of Elves could achieve this. When it came to the choice of transportation to the registration area, Qingchuan and the other two unanimously rejected the faster underground rail car and chose the floating car. Floating flower cars were a special form of transportation in the City of Elves. Everyone who came to the City of Elves for the first time would choose to ride the floating flower cars. They would stand in the air and admire the beautiful scenery of the City of Elves. While enjoying the beauty of nature, they would also admire the superb modern technology. It was a very good enjoyment. Qingchuan and the other two boarded the floating float. A float attendant dressed as an elf put a beautiful garland on Su Enjing's head with a smile. This was a treatment only given to girls who came to the elf city for the first time. With the garland on her head, the pure and lovely Su Enjing naturally became the focus of many passengers. Qingchuan looked at the bustling street outside the car and felt the peace and tranquility hidden in the bustling street. His entire body and mind relaxed at this moment, and he naturally enjoyed the comfort and peace in front of him. Natural peace, this was the charm of the City of Elves. The speed of the floating float wasn't considered fast. After half an hour, Qingchuan and the other two finally arrived at their stop and could alight. Along the way, they had only seen a tenth of the beautiful scenery in the City of Elves. There were still many famous scenic spots that they had not seen. However, registration was more important. No matter how reluctant they were, they could only alight and head to the registration area. As one of the 6 great academies of the Star Dragon Federation, the Black Moon Combat Academy had a great influence in the City of Elves. It was also because of this that the Black Moon Combat Academy was able to set up a registration area in the center of the City of Elves. It was specifically used to receive new students every year. The Black Moon Combat Academy's registration area was within a towering ancient tree. Qingchuan and the other two followed the signs and walked into the Black Moon Combat Academy's registration hall. At this moment, there were already over 100 figures in the registration hall. These people were the same as Qingchuan and the other two. They were all third-year high school students who had come to register for the Black Moon Combat Academy's assessment. Seeing these people obediently and quietly lining up, Qingchuan and the other two prepared to join the line as well. However, at this moment, a hazy light suddenly shone in the sky above the registration hall. Following this, a delicate figure slowly descended from the sky and stood in front of Qingchuan. Student Qingchuan, welcome. Seeing the enlarged version of Lei standing in front of him, Qingchuan couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment. At the same time, many people in the hall turned their gazes to Qingchuan because of Lei's sudden appearance. Their eyes were filled with envy and astonishment. Another super genius with the Black Moon emblem has arrived. I heard Lei say that his name is Qingchuan. What a familiar name. I think I've heard it somewhere before. Damn, this Qingchuan. Could he be the one from the state capital of Qing who fought against 100 people and won the Hidden Dragon arena battle? For a moment, the registration hall became noisy because of the appearance of Qingchuan and Lei. After all, every person with the Black Moon emblem was a super genius recognized by the Black Moon Combat Academy. They had already been internally selected to be auditing students of the Black Moon Combat Academy, and the best among them could even directly become official students of the Black Moon Combat Academy. Seeing the astonishment on Qingchuan's face, Lei smiled and cutely said to Qingchuan, Student Qingchuan, the Lei in your Black Moon emblem is me. However, that is only my doppelganger. The one standing in front of you is my real body. As the owner of the Black Moon emblem, you have the privilege of not having to queue up and can directly go in to register. I'm here to welcome you. Usually, Lei would not reveal her real body. She would only appear when someone with the Black Moon emblem, such as Qingchuan, was present. After hearing Lei's explanation, Qin Xuan nodded and turned to Su and Jing and Hu Dingshan. I'm sorry. I'll take my leave first. It's fine. We'll meet again later. Su and Jing and Hu Dingshan smiled as they bid farewell to Qin Xuan. Then, they walked towards the queue. Qin Xuan, on the other hand, was led by Lei into the depths of the hall under the envious gazes of the crowd. Student Qin Xuan, after you register, you will be faced with a choice. In the corridor, Lei smiled and said to Qin Xuan, the first choice is to directly become an auditing student. The second choice is to participate in the official assessment. If you pass, you will become an official student. If you fail, you will become an auditing student. I choose the second choice. Qin Xuan took a deep breath and made his choice without hesitation. Chapter 109. Since he had already reached this step, Qin Xuan had no reason to choose to become an auditing student. How would he know if he would succeed if he did not try? Lei was not surprised by Qin Xuan's choice. She smiled and said to Qin Xuan, Student Qin Xuan, the Black Moon Mountain Range is filled with danger. With your strength, you might encounter danger. During the assessment, the Black Moon Combat Academy will not send any teachers to protect you. In other words, if you encounter any danger, you will most likely face death. Are you sure you won't change your choice? Qin Xuan pursed his lips and said with an incomparably firm tone, I won't change. You have the right to change your choice before the assessment begins. Although Qin Xuan had already given her a firm answer, Lei still gave Qin Xuan the opportunity to change his choice. This was because even if his beliefs were firm now, it did not mean that they would remain firm in the future. Super geniuses were young and impetuous, so it was normal for them to make risky choices. However, some people might regret their decision after they truly understood the dangers of the Black Moon Mountain Range. Therefore, they allowed the super geniuses who had made the second choice to change their choice before the assessment began. After all, the Black Moon Combat Academy's goal was to recruit students, not to kill. For a super genius like Qin Xuan, the fall of any one of them would be a huge loss to the Black Moon Combat Academy. Under Lei's guidance, Qin Xuan successfully completed his registration. He was now an auditing student registered in the Black Moon Combat Academy's records. As long as he could survive through the Black Moon Mountain Range and reach the Azure Ancient City within 2 months, he would naturally become an official student of the Black Moon Combat Academy. If Qin Xuan was still alive within the Black Moon Mountain Range, he would still be admitted as an auditing student even if he failed the assessment. However, if Qin Xuan left the Black Moon Mountain Range during the assessment, then Qin Xuan would lose his chance to enter the Black Moon Combat Academy. Of course, if he was faced with a life-threatening crisis, Qin Xuan could still ask the Black Moon Combat Academy for help. However, if he did so, then it would be the same as voluntarily withdrawing from the academy. The Black Moon Combat Academy would never accept him. This was a rule that Qin Xuan had to understand. It did not matter if he failed the assessment or chose to give up. However, if he died, then there would be nothing left. After the registration, Lei led Qin Xuan to the examination hall. She wanted to do a comprehensive examination on Qin Xuan, which made Qin Xuan uneasy. After all, both he and Zhou had guessed that his brain development had reached the perfect state. Lei, can I not take the examination? Lei was stunned for a moment. Then, she said to Qin Xuan, Student Qin Xuan, this comprehensive examination is to allow the Black Moon Combat Academy to grasp your body's information in greater detail. From there, they can formulate the most suitable study plan for you. If you refuse, then it might affect your future growth. After hearing Lei's explanation, Qin Xuan could not help but feel a headache coming on. What should he do now? At this moment, Lei seemed to have received some sort of message. She suddenly said to Qin Xuan, Student Qin Xuan, you can take the examination now. Qin Xuan was puzzled and asked why. Lei looked at Qin Xuan strangely and said, Not long ago, Sister Ningyu received news that you had come to register. She sent me a message saying that she has already formulated the strictest study plan for you in the history of the Black Moon Combat Academy. Therefore, regardless of the results of your examination, it will not affect your study plan. Therefore, you naturally do not need to take the examination. The corner of Qinchuan's mouth twitched. The strictest study plan in the history of the Black Moon Combat Academy? This seductress really thought highly of him. Furthermore, Sister Ningya also said that she will not allow you to become an auditing student. You must pass an official examination before you can enter the academy. If you fail, then you will be expelled from the academy. After saying this, Lele looked at Qinchuan with pity. Qinchuan did not know if he was lucky or unlucky to have attracted Sister Ningya's attention. Qinchuan's face darkened and he asked, "Did that seductress tell you this?" "Yes." Lele looked at Qinchuan strangely. "Seductress?" This name was surprisingly appropriate. "I understand." Qinchuan took a deep breath and said to Lele, "I never intended to change my choice. Furthermore, I will not give her the chance to dissuade me." What a joke. It was not easy for him to come here. How could he be dissuaded? He still wanted to save face. In the azure ancient city, in a quiet cafe by the Bluestone Street, Ningya, who was wearing a moon-white cheongsam, sat elegantly on the sofa. She observed Qinchuan's every move through Lele's point of view. She was very satisfied with Qinchuan's performance, but she was even more satisfied with the title of seductress. "Ningya, is this the brat that you personally chose? He doesn't seem to be anything special." A cute little loli wearing a long white dress sat opposite Ningya and smiled. "However, his perception of you is very accurate. You are a seductress through and through." Hearing the little loli's words, Ningya faintly glanced at her and said, "If I'm a seductress, then what are you? An old hag? You're already 200 years old, but you still dress yourself up every day. Don't you feel ashamed?" The little loli giggled and said, "Even after 200 years, I will still be a little loli." At that time, maybe you will really become an old seductress. You just said that he doesn't seem to be anything special. Ningya smiled and said, "When you first entered the chi refining stage, did you have a record of killing monsters?" "No." The little loli replied frankly, "Now that you mention it, I am suddenly a little interested in him. I just don't know how high his brain development is. Has it exceeded that standard? I only know that he had undergone a test half a year ago. At that time, his brain development was 89%. He was only one step away from the standard." Ningya took a deep look at Qinchuan's figure and said, "Now that half a year has passed, how much progress do you think he has made?" The little loli tilted her head and pondered for a moment. Suddenly, she said to Ningya, "Haven't you always wanted my set of 9-star talisman pens? I'll give it to you. However, how about giving this student to me? Su Yuluo, you'd better not have any ideas about him. He is mine." Facing Ningya's cold threat, Su Yuluo grinned. "I'm so scared. Disgusting." Ningya looked at Su Yuluo with some disdain. A 200-year-old person still pretending to be cute. What a bad taste. Chapter 110. After a series of registration activities, Qinchuan was finally free. He stood outside the registration hall for a while and waited for Su Enjing and Hu Dingshan, who had already completed their registration activities. "Were you waiting for us?" Seeing Qinchuan's figure, Su Enjing was a little surprised. She had thought that Qinchuan would act alone. Qinchuan smiled and said to Su Enjing, "I'm not familiar with this elven city, and the only people I know are the two of you." "Of course I have to, Qinchuan." At this moment, a surprise cheer suddenly rang out from behind Qinchuan. Qinchuan subconsciously turned around, but before he could clearly see who had shouted, that figure had already rushed into his embrace. "I just heard some people talking about the suspected winner of the Hidden Dragon Arena battle, Qinchuan, also coming to apply for the Black Moon Combat Academy. I thought that they had made a mistake, but I didn't expect that it really was you." The beautiful girl hugged Qinchuan with both hands, her bright eyes looking at Qinchuan's face that was just inches away from hers. Her eyes were filled with excitement and joy. Seeing the girl's signature purple hair, Qinchuan could not help but ask in surprise, "Luzi, why are you here?" The girl who was hugging Qin Chuan was none other than Qin Chuan's old acquaintance from the special training camp, Lu Zi. Do you still remember what I once said to you? I once had a dream. At first, I chose to give it up, but after meeting you, I regained my confidence and prepared to give it a try. Lu Zi smiled and explained to Qin Chuan. The dream that I said at that time was to enter the Black Moon Combat Academy and become an official student. Hearing Lu Zi's explanation, Qin Chuan was even more surprised. You also have a Black Moon emblem? Of course. Lu Zi nodded vigorously. I know that you also have a Black Moon badge. I believe that you must have also chosen to participate in the official assessment. According to Lu Zi's understanding of Qin Chuan would never be willing to be an ordinary auditing student. That's right, Qin Chuan chuckled and said, it looks like we can fight side by side again. However, if you don't let go, I will be strangled to death by you before the assessment. Lu Zi blushed shyly when she heard that. She quickly let go of Qin Chuan's arm and awkwardly changed the topic. Are these two your friends? Yes. Qin Chuan nodded and said, they are also here to participate in the assessment. Hello, my name is Hu Dingshan. Hu Dingshan very generously introduced himself to Lu Zi. Originally, he was worried that something might happen between Qin Chuan and Suanjing. Now that he saw that Lu Zi and Qin Chuan were so close, his heart suddenly relaxed a lot. Hello, my name is Suanjing. I am here to participate in the assessment and prepare to enter the school as an auditing student. Suanjing looked at Lu Zi with a subtle expression. It had to be said that Lu Zi was very beautiful, a kind of sexy and charming beauty. My name is Lu Zi. You are Qin Chuan's friends, so you're also my friends. If you have any problems in the future, feel free to look for me. Lu Zi smiled and introduced herself to Suanjing. At the same time, she used a subtle gaze to carefully size up Suanjing. When girls meet, it was inevitable to compare themselves. Let's go. I came 2 days earlier than you and am familiar with this place. Let me treat you to a meal. After the previous shyness, Lu Zi had already returned to normal. She very naturally reached out to grab Qin Chuan's arm and complained to Qin Chuan. Previously, I thought that you would directly enter the Starry Sky Academy and was sad for a while. If I had known that you would also enter the Black Moon Combat Academy, I would have gone with you. Qin Chuan heard this and smiled. I also didn't know that your dream was to enter the Black Moon Combat Academy. Perhaps this is fate. Lu Zi smiled at Qin Chuan and said, with you here, I am very confident that the two of us will pass the assessment. Did you come alone? Qin Chuan asked curiously. No, it was my grandfather who brought me here. My Black Moon insignia was given to me by my grandfather. Lu Zi shook her head and said to Qin Chuan, I forgot to tell you that my grandfather is a teacher in the Black Moon Combat Academy. However, he won't let me in through the back door. Qin Chuan was somewhat surprised. He never thought that Lu Zi's grandfather would actually be a teacher in the Black Moon Combat Academy. Don't worry, my grandfather has a very good temper and is very easy to get along with. Lu Zi seemed to be worried that Qin Chuan would feel pressured after knowing her grandfather's identity. Thus, she said to Qin Chuan, when you meet my grandfather, you will know that we are not lying to you. After hearing Lu Zi's words, Qin Chuan couldn't help but look at Lu Zi with a strange expression and said, why do I feel like I'm going to meet your parents? Lu Zi's face turned slightly red, and she glared at Qin Chuan and said, meet your head. Hu Dingshan and Suanjing walked behind Qin Chuan and Lu Zi. As they looked at the two who were chatting happily, they felt a special emotion in their hearts. To be able to become friends with Qin Chuan, this Lu Zi seems very approachable. Hu Dingshan sighed with emotion. They are all super geniuses, but why are the ones we met before all so arrogant? Qin Chuan is really approachable, but Lu Zi isn't. Suanjing looked at Lu Zi's beautiful back with a complicated expression and said in a low voice, if it wasn't for Qin Chuan, even if we passed by Lu Zi, she might not even look at us. As a girl, Suanjing could see that Lu Zi was an extremely proud girl. The friendliness she displayed towards them was purely because of Qin Chuan. From this, it could be seen that Qin Chuan had an extremely important position in Lu Zi's heart. The two of them seemed to be quite compatible. Hu Dingshan probed Su and Jing and asked, "Little Jing, what do you think?" Su and Jing's expression darkened when she heard this, and she whispered, "Perhaps." After enjoying a sumptuous dinner, Su and Jing and Hu Dingshan found an excuse to bid farewell to Qin Chuan and returned to the inn that the Black Moon Combat Academy had prepared for the candidates. Qin Chuan and Lu Zi leisurely strolled along the streets, admiring the beautiful night scenery of the elf city. "Qin Chuan, thank you." Lu Zi had her hands behind her back as she walked beside Qin Chuan. She looked at Qin Chuan with a rare, gentle gaze. Qin Chuan smiled and said, "Why are you suddenly thanking me? I originally thought that in my future university life, I would only be able to study and study. It would be so boring that I could see the end of it with a single glance. But with your appearance, I'm suddenly filled with anticipation for the upcoming university life. I really like the feeling of having an uncertain future, so I want to thank you." "How did you know that it would be an uncertain surprise?" "It's probably because the person walking beside me is you." Chapter 111. In the hotel room, Qin Chuan sat cross-legged on the bed as he seriously pondered about the upcoming official assessment. Qin Chuan had already learned from Lu Zi that, according to her grandfather, there were a total of 9 super geniuses who had obtained the recognition of the Black Moon Combat Academy's mentors and obtained the Black Moon emblem. Today, these 9 super geniuses had all successfully registered and, as expected, had all chosen to participate in the official assessment. They were all aiming to become official students of the Black Moon Combat Academy. Furthermore, there was a competitive relationship between the 9 of them. Every year, the Black Moon Combat Academy provided a fixed amount of cultivation resources to the first-year students. The more people there were, the less resources each person would receive. On the other hand, the fewer official students there were, the more resources each person would receive. Because of this, during the official assessment every year, due to the competitive relationship between them, very few people would choose to team up. Of course, people like Qin Chuan and Lu Zi, who had a close relationship, were an exception. Furthermore, Lu Zi had revealed a rather important piece of information to Qin Chuan. Among the 9 of them, there was one person that they could not afford to provoke no matter what. When he thought about the deep fear on Lu Zi's face when she mentioned that person's name, Qin Chuan could not help but feel curious. Just how powerful was that person to be able to make Lu Zi so cautious? Maybe I'll be able to see him when I get to school. The next morning, Qin Chuan finished his night of cultivation. Just as he was about to get up and wash up, the door to his room was open from the outside. Lu Zi, who was wearing a dark purple combat uniform, walked in confidently. She casually threw a black combat uniform on the sofa and said to Qin Chuan, "Try on the combat uniform that I've specially chosen for you." Qin Chuan, who was wearing a nightgown, grinned and said, "Then I'm going to change my clothes. Are you not going to give way? Do you think I'm interested in your body?" Lu Zi rolled her eyes at Qin Chuan, then turned around and walked outside. As she walked, she said to Qin Chuan, "I'll go buy some breakfast. Hurry up, we'll set off for the Black Moon Mountain Range soon." After Qin Chuan washed up, he put on the combat uniform that Lu Zi had given him. It fit him very well and was very comfortable. It seemed that Lu Zi had put a lot of thought into choosing this combat uniform. This was Qin Chuan's first time wearing a combat suit, but he soon realized the benefits of the combat suit. The combat suit had a certain degree of protection, and it also prevented mosquito bites. There's almost no sound when moving, and it could be said that it was very suitable for fighting in the mountains. "Yo, it looks pretty good." Lu Zi walked over with 2 bags of breakfast. When she saw that Qin Chuan had already put on his combat uniform, she smiled and said, "Now you look like a warrior." Qin Chuan smiled and said to Lu Zi, "Since you said that we'll set off for the Black Moon Mountain Range this morning, I believe you've already collected all the information you need." Of course. Lu Zi turned on her optical computer and said to Qin Chuan, "I'll send you the information now. You can take your time to look at it on our way to the Black Moon Mountain Range." Lu Zi picked up a sandwich and took a bite. She said to Qin Chuan in a somewhat muffled voice, "It's a good thing that I set off 2 days late, because I wanted to collect information. Otherwise, I might not have met you." The other super geniuses had basically set off for the Black Moon Mountain Range the next day after completing their registration. However, Lu Zi was reluctant to part with the beautiful scenery of the Elven City, so she had stayed for 2 more days. It was also because of this that she had heard about Qin Chuan's matters while she was collecting information and had found Qin Chuan. "It seems like you've already prepared everything. I just need to follow you into the mountains." Qin Chuan roughly glanced at the information that Lu Zi had sent him and smiled. "It's been hard on you." After the two of them had breakfast, they set off for the Black Moon Mountain Range. Qin Chuan did not specifically bid farewell to Su Yinjing and Hu Dingshan in person. He only used his optical computer to send a farewell message, looking forward to seeing them again at the Black Moon Combat Academy. Sitting in the flying shuttle that Lu Zi had hired earlier, Qin Chuan began to seriously flip through the information regarding the Black Moon Mountain Range. The reason why the Black Moon Mountain Range was so dangerous was not because of how complicated the terrain was or how strong the demonic beasts were, but because of the night in the Black Moon Mountain Range. Whenever night fell, the Black Moon Mountain Range, which had been peaceful during the day, would become abnormally strange and gloomy. The demonic beasts would become incomparably irritable and aggressive. They would also become extremely sensitive to the aura of blood. However, this was not the most terrifying thing. What truly made people incomparably fearful was the legendary mountain ghost. No one knew what the mountain ghosts of the Black Moon Mountain Range looked like, because anyone who had seen one had already died. "Lu Zi, what exactly is a mountain ghost? Why is there so little information about it?" Qin Chuan frowned as he glanced at Lu Zi, who was sitting beside him. Could it be that no one had ever seen a mountain ghost that had survived? Mountain ghosts are a specialty of the Black Moon Mountain Range. It's said that they evolved from the people who died in the Black Moon Mountain Range. Very few people have ever encountered mountain ghosts, but none of them have ever survived. That's why there are very few ways to deal with a mountain ghost. I haven't been able to find anything about it either. My grandfather should know something about the mountain ghost, but he wouldn't help me cheat, so that's all I know. Lu Zi pondered for a moment before saying to Qin Chuan, "Furthermore, mountain ghosts don't appear often, so there's no need to be too worried." All right. Qin Chuan didn't care too much about the mountain ghost and continued to flip through the other information. Occasionally, he would ask Lu Zi some questions. Just like this, an hour passed by unknowingly, and they finally arrived at the outskirts of the Black Moon Mountain Range. There was still some time before noon, so Qin Chuan and Lu Zi both decided to settle their lunch outside before heading into the mountains. Although the Black Moon Mountain Range was extremely dangerous, it was still relatively safe outside. That's why a market had sprung up in the vicinity. One could buy many specialties of the Black Moon Mountain Range, as well as the items needed to enter the mountains. The market was located on a relatively flat grassland. When Qin Chuan and Lu Zi arrived, there weren't many people strolling around the market. That's why the stall owners were chatting in groups of 2 or 3. When they saw Qin Chuan and Lu Zi's figures, they sized them up and smiled. "Look, another super genius from the Black Moon Combat Academy has arrived, and it's actually a pair." Over the years, they had seen too many super geniuses from the Black Moon Combat Academy, so they didn't find it strange. On the contrary, Qin Chuan and Lu Zi were filled with curiosity about this market. Chapter 112. Qin Chuan originally thought that the things sold in this market should be medicinal herbs or animal skins, but he did not expect to see all kinds of magic weapons in the stalls. There were even rare defensive magic weapons. You don't have to look at these magic weapons. Let me tell you, most of these magic weapons have been repaired after being damaged. There are no problems from the outside, but when you really use them, you will find that there are all kinds of problems with these magic weapons. Lu Zi whispered to Qin Chuan, "I heard about this from someone in the Elf City. The people here are all very black-hearted." Qin Chuan nodded gently when he heard this. He also retracted his gaze from those magic weapons and turned to look at other things. "Don't worry. I brought a lot of magic weapons with me for this trip into the mountains, and most of them are single-use. For this official assessment, Lu Zi could be said to be quite well prepared. As the name suggested, single-use magic weapons were magic weapons that could only be used once and would be scrapped. This kind of magic weapon usually had three characteristics. First, it was expensive. Second, it could be used directly without any sacrificial refining. Third, it was powerful. Later, Lu Zi would give a portion of the single-use magic weapons to Qin Chuan when they were eating. In this regard, she would definitely not be stingy. Most of the food provided in the market was beast meat, and the drinks were basically beast milk. It could be said to be very special. When in Rome, Qin Chuan and Lu Zi did as the Romans did. They each ordered a portion of beast meat and beast milk and began to enjoy their last lunch before entering the mountains. While they were eating, some stall owners came to sell some things with smiles on their faces. However, most of them were used to scam people. Qin Chuan and Lu Zi directly rejected them. Little brother, little girl, those people in front are all lying to you. You must not be fooled. A middle-aged man who looked very simple and honest walked in front of Qin Chuan and Lu Zi with a bag and said to them very carefully, "The things they are selling to you are all fake." Hearing the middle-aged man's words, Qin Chuan and Lu Zi could not help but look at each other in surprise. Those people who came before all introduced their treasures as soon as they came up. This was the first time someone said such words to them. "Thank you for your reminder." Qin Chuan smiled and said, "But we don't plan to buy magic weapons. The magic weapons they sell are all rubbish, but I'm different." The middle-aged man looked around carefully and whispered to Qin Chuan, "I'm selling magic weapons." Qin Chuan could not help but raise his eyebrows slightly. Magic weapons? Even low-grade magic weapons have the qualifications to be auctioned. You're telling me that you're selling magic weapons in this kind of place? Lu Zi looked at the middle-aged man with a playful expression and said, "He hasn't seen the world. He looks like a fool who is easy to fool. But I'm not easy to fool." Qin Chuan looked at Lu Zi speechlessly. "I'm also a person who has seen the big scene. Okay, old Lu, am not lying to you. It really is a very special magic weapon." Old Lu saw that Qin Chuan and Lu Zi did not believe him. So he immediately took out a square mechanical box that could isolate aura from his bag. Seeing this box, Lu Zi could not help but be surprised. This kind of mechanical box was mostly used to store magic weapons to prevent the aura of the magic weapon from leaking out. Old Lu took out such a mechanical box. Could it be that he really had a magic weapon to sell? Seeing that Qin Chuan and Lu Zi were interested, Old Lu was not in a hurry to open the mechanical box. He coughed lightly and said to Qin Chuan and Lu Zi, "This mechanical box is a top-grade item that I spent 100 spiritual value points to buy. Tell me, if I'm not selling a real magic weapon, would I be willing to buy such a mechanical box? Stop talking nonsense. Open it and let us see." Lu Zi looked at the mechanical box curiously. She wanted to see what kind of top-grade magic weapon could be found in this kind of place. Old Lu chuckled and used his fingerprint to unlock the mechanical box. Following the sound of a mechanism activating, the magic weapon that was hidden deep in the mechanical box was finally revealed in front of Qin Chuan and Lu Zi. Looking at the item in the mechanical box, Lu Zi sneered and said, "This is the magic weapon you were talking about? Do you think that we are blind, or do you think that we are young and easy to fool? Little girl, don't think that I'm lying to you." Old Lu smiled and said to Lu Zi confidently, "This magic weapon of mine is incomparably sturdy. No matter what you do, you can't damage it at all. How about this? I can take it out and you can attack it as you wish. As long as you can leave a single mark on this magic weapon, you can treat it as if I'm lying to you. I'm willing to compensate you with 1,000 spiritual value points. How about it?" Lu Zi shook her head in disappointment and said, "I've seen this kind of trick too many times. Later, when your treasure is broken, you will slander us for damaging your magic weapon and ask us for compensation. If we don't give it to you, you won't let us go. You will threaten us by delaying our participation in the assessment, right? How can that be? How much is this stone?" Qin Chuan, who had been silent all this time, suddenly opened his mouth and directly asked for the price. This is not a stone, it's a magic weapon. Old Lu solemnly said to Qin Chuan, "Young man, your girlfriend is unreasonable. You can't be unreasonable, right? You can give it a try. It's really indestructible. Whether it's a stone or a magic weapon, I'm asking you how much it is." Qin Chuan showed an impatient look. In reality, his heart was so excited that it was about to jump out of his throat. The moment old Lu opened the mechanical box, the runic sword that was originally quietly floating in Qin Chuan's mind suddenly became restless. It wanted to fly out of Qin Chuan's mind a few times, but it was stopped by Qin Chuan. The runic sword was a big secret that could not be easily exposed. The reason why the runic sword became restless was also very simple. It was because old Lu's mechanical box did not contain a magic weapon, but a fist-sized stone. Since this stone was able to cause the runic sword to become restless, it must have come from the broken stone pillars. This, cough cough, this magic weapon is worth 1,000 spiritual value points. Old Lu chuckled and said to Qin Chuan, "When you buy it, you'll know. You definitely won't be at a disadvantage or be tricked." Lu Zi curled her lips when she heard that. If this stone could be sold for 1,000 spiritual value points, then he might as well sell stones all over the world. Sooner or later, he would become the richest man in the Federation. 100 spiritual value points. Sell it or not. Qin Chuan indifferently glanced at the stone, then lowered his head and continued eating. He did not have any intention of paying attention to old Lu. On the other hand, Lu Zi looked at Qin Chuan with some surprise and said, "Are you crazy? Spend money to buy a stone? If this stone is really indestructible, then it's not a bad item. However, 1,000 spiritual value points? Qin Chuan sneered, clearly expressing his disdain. Chapter 113. On the way into the mountain, Qin Chuan looked at Lu Zi, who was walking in front of him. He asked with some amusement, "Are you still angry? You're still talking." Lu Zi turned around and glared fiercely at Qin Chuan. She said, "It's just a stone, and you actually spent 300 spiritual value points to buy in the end. Don't you see that the people around us are looking at us like we're fools? If you ask me, among those people, old Lu is the most cunning." Thinking back to what had happened just now, Lu Zi was simply angered to death by Qin Chuan. He insisted on spending money to buy a stone. No matter how hard she tried to stop him, she could not stop him. He was as stubborn as a donkey. Looking at Lu Zi's angry appearance, Qin Chuan chuckled and said to Lu Zi, "What if I tell you that old Lu is the one who suffered a loss?" Lu Zi was stunned for a moment when she heard this. Then, she said with some suspicion, "But that's clearly a stone." Lu Zi had carefully observed the stone with her perception. Other than its sturdiness, there was nothing special about it. "All right, I can only tell you that this stone is very useful to me. However, I can't tell you the specific use for the time being." Qin Chuan smiled and said to Lu Zi, "Could it be that in your eyes, I'm a fool? I thought it was strange that you would be so stupid. I didn't expect that stone to be such a treasure." Lu Zi's eyes lit up when she heard this. No wonder you wanted to ask old Lu about the origin of that stone. What a pity. Although old Lu made up a story about its forging process, I can tell that he picked it up by accident. Qin Chuan felt a little regretful. If only old Lu had more of these stones. "Don't worry, I'll help you keep an eye out in the future." Lu Zi patted Qin Chuan's shoulder and said with a smile, "We took advantage of them. If they mock us, so be it. In any case, we're the ones who have the last laugh. Let's go." This time, Lu Zi didn't walk in front alone. Instead, she walked side by side with Qin Chuan. Seeing that LVZ did not ask him about the use of the stone, Qin Chuan heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. At the same time, he was very touched. To have such a close friend was really a very fortunate thing. After entering the outskirts of the Black Moon Mountain Range, Qin Chuan and Lu Zi began to be cautious. On the way forward, they encountered a few wild beasts, but they were easily dealt with. Rumor has it that the Black Moon Mountain Range isn't dangerous during the day. It's true. Lucy looked up at the sky and said, I just don't know what will happen at night. At this time, they had already been in the depths of the Black Moon Mountain range for 3 hours. They had advanced dozens of kilometers. The sky was gradually darkening. It was time for them to find a place to rest at night. Qin had lived in the Cloud Dragon Mountain range for 3 months. He had experience in finding a safe place to rest in the forest. Along the way, he saw a big tree and stopped to observe for a while. Soon he found something. He said to Lu Zi, Let's go, follow me. While talking, Qin climbed up the tree. Soon, he stopped in front of a spacious tree hole. Lu Zi followed behind Qin. Seeing the tree hole in the trunk, she was surprised and said to Qin, Wow, you can find this. It's a little dirty inside. Wait here, I'll go clean it. Cleaning was a dirty and tiring job. As a man, Qin naturally had to take the initiative to do it. Well, I'll go look for a water source nearby. I won't go far. I'll be back soon. Lu Zi wouldn't be idle. She had to look for a water source and replenish it in time. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if she had to look for a water source when there was no water to drink. Qin simply cleaned the tree hole and then spread a blanket inside. At this time, Lu Zi also came back. I walked around nearby, but I didn't find a water source. Lu Zi glanced at the tree hole that Qin had arranged. She praised Qin and said the layout is good. Let's go in first. Qin looked up at the dim yellow sky and said, It's the first night in the Black Moon Mountain range. It's better to prepare early. After Lu Zi entered the tree hole, Qin found some tree vines nearby and weaved some branches together. Then, he returned to the tree hole and blocked the entrance of the hole with a simple fence. It could be considered as a layer of protection. Lu Zi sat in the tree hole and looked at Qin's busy figure. She didn't feel uneasy because of the coming night. Instead, she felt exceptionally warm and stable. Okay, Qin clapped his hands and said to Lu Zi, We'll rest here tonight. If you want to relieve yourself, just go out and squat on a branch. I can't see with this thing blocking my view. Nothing good comes out of dog's mouth. Lu Zi glared at Qin and said, As a qi refining stage cultivator, within 3 days, I have no problem. After a day of traveling, the two began to rest after chatting and laughing for a while. Not long after, darkness fell on the Black Moon Mountain range, causing the atmosphere of the entire Black Moon Mountain range to become strange and gloomy. Woo-woo. A gust of wind blew, waking up Qin from his deep sleep. He slowly opened his eyes and looked in the direction of the tree hole. The fence was still there. Unknowingly, Lu Zi ran to Qin's side and hugged one of Qin's arms while sleeping. This made Qin involuntarily think of you, Kair. When they were hiding in the tree hole to avoid the demon beasts, a similar thing happened. After quietly observing the surrounding situation for a while, Qin was ready to continue to rest. But at this moment, not far away, an extremely mournful roar of a beast suddenly sounded, waking up Lu Zi from her deep sleep. What happened outside? In the darkness, Lu Zi looked up at Qin's blurry face, then picked up her backpack from his side, fumbled for a while, took out 2 night vision goggles, handed one to Qin, and said, Put it on. Qin was about to reach out to take the night vision goggles. Suddenly, he saw a pair of bloody eyes behind Lu Zi. Be careful, Qin whispered, at the same time reached out and hugged Lu Zi's body into his arms, and hid on the other side of the tree hole. Woo-woo. The night wind blew, but the silence in the tree hole was a little bit awkward. Lu Zi curled up in Qin's arms, blushing, and whispered, Qin, what did you see just now? Qin wanted to say that he saw a pair of bloody eyes, but at this time, there was no third person in the tree hole except for him and Lu Zi. If there is no danger, then let's continue to rest. Lu Zi left Qin's arms and whispered, I didn't expect you to be like this, Qin. Qin, you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.